District Governing Board. Today is December 9th. The time is 5:04 p.m. Will you please stand for the pledge? Flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands. Can I have a roll call beginning with Mr. Jackson?
George Jackson.
Pam Kirby. Barbara Perleberg.
Denny Brown.
And Bonnie Sneed. All members are present. At this time, we'll have a public hearing on revision number 1. Before we do that, I just wanted to mention we have cake in the back in recognition and thanks and celebration for Denny Brown's service on the governing board. Tonight will be his last night. We will miss him dearly. I just wanted to mention a few highlights of his esteemed career on our governing board. That he spearheaded the TechLink program that brings computers to a lot of our students who might not be able to afford to have them in the home. He voted in support of the M&O override and was very supportive of it. Voted in support of the middle school bond in 2010. Voted in support of the 2.0 GPA for students to participate in extracurricular activities. He's been a supporter of the Parent University and Health Packs program at NLC and Tonalea, and participant in the Parada del Sol. And he is always a supporter of students and great causes, and we want to thank him so much for his efforts over the years.
Okay, I'll talk. So it's been an honor and a pleasure. And I want to thank the front row folk. I want to thank the board. I want to thank the back of the bus crew, and you guys don't know who that is. I want to thank district administration and on-site administration. I want to thank the bus drivers, the crossing guards, Big Bob up at the warehouse. I want to thank everybody in this room for caring about our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So then we'll do the item number 4, public hearing on revision number 1 of fiscal year 2015 expenditure budget.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We just have a few informational items that our CFO, Danny O'Brien, will share with you. This is a normal revision, but the state is requiring a new public hearing, and that's why we're doing it.
There we go. Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson, Sandra. This evening, by state statute, by December 15th of every year, if we have any changes to the budget based off of carryover amounts, AFR actual expenditures, or any other adjustments, then we have to hold this public hearing and have to approve the revision of the budget. So this is budget revision 1. There's not a lot to it. The main highlights of this is, as we've talked several times, the state is still reducing our district additional assistance, also previously known as unrestricted capital. That dollar amount is given as a projection, and then they work through the fall to get a final amount. The amount is not a percentage of our budget. It's a flat dollar amount for the whole entire state. So as ADM comes out and as the state figures out exactly where they are, the amount gets adjusted. So we did have an adjustment there. We had budgeted the reduction of $6.9 million. The actual reduction was $7.2 million. So we did reduce our M&O funds and our capital funds to make that adjustment. The other major adjustment was that we had a large increase in our title and state grants, and this was mainly due to the approval of the 21st Century Grant that we finally got approval for after the board approved the adopted budget. And I can answer any other questions, but those are the major changes.
Mrs. Kirby.
Sorry, thank you. So I'm looking at what you provided to the board. It's one pager. It has explanation of changes at the top. And I'm going to the schedule at the bottom. We have that to put up on the screen or not? Do we have that to put up?
I don't have it to put up on the screen, but
Okay.
I can
Well,
maybe try to find it.
It says DAA, reduction for state adjustment, and it's a decrease, an incremental decrease of $300,000, which, is that what's related to ADM?
A majority of it, Board Member Kirby, a majority of it is related to the reduction by the state. Other amounts are due to variances between what we proposed the carryover was going to be, and then after we got through the encumbrance period, we finished off, and the carryover amount was slightly different.
And is it just that one line item? Because then my next question is, what's driving the unrestricted capital fund decrease of $1.6 million?
That is mainly due to the carryover amount. So we had a large carryover amount that we had projected, and then we had the expenses come through, finished off some projects, did a few things in June and finished them off, and then when the POs were all cut out, then we had to reduce that based off of carryover.
So what were those to the tune of $1.6 million? What were those expenses?
I don't have the details. I'd have to get back to you on that. If you'd like the details, I can send them.
Can you give me 80% of it? Does it have anything to do, or are they any of the projects that we have later on in the consent agenda?
No. No, Board Member Kirby, they're not.
It's technology, capital override technology.
We spent them. We spent early capital override technology dollars. Okay.
Yes, we, again, as we get towards the end of the fiscal year, we project if things are going to come in or not. We had some technology items come in, and so we were able to receive those, and we had to then go ahead and not use that as carryover, go ahead and receive them, and we made some of those adjustments. So this was directly related to capital, had nothing to do with any of the building projects that we've done at all.
Is this the same fund that those building projects would come, or totally?
No,
that's bond,
totally
right?
separate. Yes,
okay. Okay. Can you just give me an idea of what those I don't remember talking about technology projects to the tune of $1.6 million.
Sure. A good portion of that, and I think Tom's out here somewhere, is we did the classroom projection refresh this summer, where we went through and based off the capital override and the projects that we had built into the capital override, we did a huge push to replace the projectors throughout the district in the classroom. And so that was the largest project.
Now it's kind of starting to come back to me.
That is the largest project that we had inside the capital override. And as those come in, we purchase them, and I know that Tom worked through that, and we basically received more than we expected.
Okay.
That's not all of that, but that's a good chunk of
thank you.
that.
At this time, then, if there's no more questions from the board, we will accept public comment regarding the hearing on revision number 1 of fiscal year 2015 expenditure budget. I have no cards. So can I have a motion to approve the revision of fiscal year 2015 expenditure budget?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to make a motion to, do I have to make a motion to adjourn the public meeting then? Sandra? Or public hearing? So I will make the motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. So now I will call to order the regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board. And item 9 is approval of the agenda. I would like to pull items 13F, 13L, and 13N from the consent agenda.
Are you pulling them for discussion, or are you completely pulling them?
For discussion.
We normally do that when we get to the consent agenda part. Okay, so what items again?
So I'd like to, let's see, let me get back to where I was here. Approval of the agenda with consent agenda items 13F, 13L, and 13N removed for discussion.
N as in Nancy?
N,
Okay.
as in Nancy.
Okay, and then
We have a second?
I want to pull some too.
Oh, okay.
And I guess now is the time to add. I would like,
So I will amend the motion that we approve the agenda with exception of consent item numbers 13F, D as in dog, F, L, M, and N that will be pulled for discussion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. And at this time, we'll have item 10, student and staff recognition and celebrations. Dr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and welcome everyone to our final board meeting in the month of December of 2014. We have a couple of celebrations this evening. First is the Arizona State Thespian Festival participants. Chaparral's theater students and the teacher, Mr. Ed Como, participate in the Arizona State Thespian Festival, and we have a celebration with them, and I'm not sure if Melissa has made it here, so Dr. Andy Forlis will be doing it. Melissa, our director of CTE, is still on jury duty, so she's was trying to get here, but she did not make it. So Andy?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, it's an honor to be able to celebrate some very special students and their teacher from Chaparral High School. Chaparral Theater Department earned several distinctions at the Arizona State Thespian Festival. The theater program earned the distinction of Gold Honor Troupe. I would like to invite Chaparral teacher Ed Como to join me as we celebrate the work of his students. Chaparral remains the Tech Challenge champions, beating out 36 other teams. The senior team of Taylor Barbera, when I call your name, you can come on up. Taylor Barbera, Mallory Gibson, Alyssa Strauss, and Tyler Tigigny posted a new record time with Mallory Gibson and Taylor Barbera scoring best in the prop changeover category.
Wow.
I would like to quickly add that Tyler and Mallory actually are, this is their second. They won last year as well, so we've actually repeated. So
Selection for her lighting design individual event.
also another note, this is actually the third year in a row that we've won this Critics' Choice Award for lighting design, so a three-peat for that.
Oh.
And Ellie Hoffman, I don't think she's here. Ellie Hoffman earned a superior rating for her monologue performance. Alex Kopp earned an excellent rating for stage management. Matt Merritt earned an excellent rating for solo musical performance. Congratulations to you amazing students and to your teacher, Ed Como, for the fine work that you do. And we'll ask you to come out into the lobby and we'll take a picture. Thank you so very much.
For
And
the
Ed,
record, I would also like to acknowledge the fact that Sandy Flayton is not here tonight. Her son Eric is actually in the orchestra concert that we're hurrying to get back so that we can provide technical support for. But anyway, so that's why she's not here tonight. But obviously, it's very much a team. and she's very much a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, drive safe and break a leg.
All right. Thank you.
They have a 6 o'clock concert, so they're going to race right back to that. Shows the dedication that we have of all of our students. So, Ed, great job. You're doing wonders, so we appreciate that. Next, we have an individual champion that we would like to recognize. Mr. Cliff McKenzie is going to recognize one of our Arcadia swimmers.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, governing board members, Ms. Como. I'm really excited about bringing this young man up. And at this time, I want to bring him up so then I can share some of his accolades. Matt Anderson, if you could come up. Matt's from Arcadia High School. And wait till you hear about Matt. Matt Anderson has achieved so much at Arcadia High in both swimming and academics. The fact that he will be swimming at Stanford University next year in the fall ties that all together. He is the state record holder in the 100 breaststroke. He set the record his junior year at the state meet, then broke the record again this year as a senior. He is the state champion for the last 2 years in the 100 breaststroke and was undefeated all season in that event. He was also the district champion and meet record holder in the 100 breaststroke and 200 IM and the 400 free relay. He holds 3 school records at Arcadia, the 200 medley relay, the 200 individual medley, and the 100 breaststroke. The best part about Matt is that he is truly, and I want to say truly, a class act and played a huge part of the swim team the 4 years he was involved. He was also the team captain this season as well, and also we need to wish him luck because he is qualified for the Olympic trials.
Wow. Congratulations. Great job. Go Titans. Go Titans. Woo.
And so, Matt, on behalf of Scottsdale Unified School District, we want to recognize you for your winning the state swimming championship, state record holder, and the excellent academics that you're doing at Arcadia. And I'm proud of you.
And also, Matt's parents are in the back. I'd like them to stand up because, you know, they spent so many hours taking him to practice, driving him here and there, sitting at the pool. Thank you all for what you've done.
Okay. And Matt, if you go in the lobby, we're going to take some pictures of that Stanford shirt that you have on. Okay? So you can go right in the lobby. Okay.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Matt. And we all strive to have shoulders like that, so thank you, Matt.
The great swimming shoulders.
He's incredible. Next up, we have another championship. Again, this is something that there's a lot of incredible superstars at Saguaro High School, but they come together as an incredible team, and I think that's what's most important. And so Cliff McKenzie and Brian Court are going to help welcome in our Saguaro High School championship football team.
All right. Yes.
Okay, great. We're all in?
I think you got it.
We're surrounding the board here. I want to talk about you guys a little, brag about you a little bit here. As you know, again, Saguaro High School topped off its football season by winning Division III state championships with a 45-21 victory against Williamsville High School on November the 29th in the title game at ASU Sun Devil Stadium. And we have you gentlemen here today because we want to truly congratulate the SaberCat football team, especially you, Coach Mon, and your athletic staff, football staff. So again, congratulations to all of you. I also want to share with the board members and our superintendent and our guests here. We have one young man who's not here this evening, and he's, I would say his teammates would say that he's a special kind of person on their team. Definitely someone that we will all be seeing on television, and that's Kristen Kurt. He could not be here today. He's being courted by a particular university, and so Auburn is at his house right now, so he couldn't be here today. But I just wanted to talk about Kristen just a little. The Gatorade Company, in collaboration with USA Today and High School Sports, has named Kristen Kurt of Sorora High School as the 2014-15 Gatorade Arizona Football Player of the Year. And according to the Gatorade Company, the award recognized an outstanding athletic excellence, but also high standards of academic achievement, exemplary character demonstrated on and off the field. These qualities distinguish Kristen as Arizona's best high school football player. Kristen is a finalist for this prestigious Gatorade National Football Player of the Year award that will be announced later this month. On top of that, I think it's been about 2 months ago, tell me if I'm wrong, but Kristen also was named on the Under Armour team that will be played on January the 2nd in St. Petersburg, Florida, along with his teammate, Jordan Butler. Is Jordan here?
Jordan's training with his long snapping coach.
Okay, so Jordan also has been selected for the team. They also, amongst some of these other young men, have made the all-city team as well. So a big applause to them. And on behalf of Coach Munns, and I know you want to say a few words, but I'm going to have the principal of the school come up and talk about you first. We would like to give you these two certificates, one for Christian and the other for the teams. And congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Cord, if you could come up for a second.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Governing Board President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson, I thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be recognized. And as Mr. McKenzie indicated, there's no question on Saguaro's campus we have some elite performers, some of the best, the top athletes, fine arts, visual arts, academic students, all the way around. The glory of being recognized for large sport team championships comes under the concept of team. And these young men in front of you today have been recognized on campus by their coaching staff, by their teachers, certainly by cafeteria members, security guards, and administration for exemplary, humanistic, reflective leadership and teamsmanship with their student body in embracing the concept of school above just football. And I say just tongue-in-cheek, as being a football guy. This group of young men have worked tirelessly for months and years, and you're recognizing many among this group are part of our senior class. 26 seniors we're going to lose to their futures above secondary high school. But within that, certainly Christian Kirk is an elite athlete, and he's probably the most recognized name in the media currently from Saguaro High School, and certainly I would say football around the state. In this recognition tonight, I appreciate our governing board understanding how the teamsmanship continues to change the culture at Saguaro High School and have Saguaro be recognized as team champions, as campus champions, as champions among and within our community. And I compliment once again, as I did out front tonight, Head Coach Jason Mons and his leadership leading these young men into a family atmosphere at our school where they've continued to stand for Saguaro High School as a whole and work hard to be their best, and certainly they've brought home another trophy in football as well. Every time you find great successes in young people, you find an outstanding leader standing either in the middle of them or many times behind them, and that's certainly the case with our two coaches here tonight, the first being our head coach, Coach Jason Mons, and our assistant head coach in charge of operations, and if I botch that, Coach will correct me, Frank Rubin is here tonight. Coach Mons, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to start by thanking the members of the board and Dr. Peterson, as well as Mr. McKenzie and Mr. Court for all the support. This takes a community to have the success that we've had. and the support that we've received not only from our own school and our administration and our teachers, but from the district and the community has been amazing. I'm going to brag on our team a little bit. We currently own the longest win streak in the state of Arizona. We've won 27 consecutive ball games, which is not easy to do by any means. We've also won back-to-back state championships in 7 out of the last 9 years that we've walked away at the end of the year with a state championship trophy. We've been recognized by the CBS Sports, maxpreps.com, as one of the top 50 high school football teams in the country this year. Out of 16,000 varsity football teams, we're going to be honored at the end of January as one of the top 50, which is an impressive feat for these guys that are standing up here. So really, really honored and proud of this team. Like Mr. Court said, I feel like we've done it the right way. We've done it with class. We've done it with sportsmanship. We've done it with high academic expectations. We're going to have our team banquet on Sunday, and we're going to honor over 75% of our team for 3.0 or better grade point averages. And so we're just really proud of these young men and the way they've gone about their business, not only being successful on the field, but in my eyes, being more successful off the field. So again, thank you guys very much for having us. Excuse me. Oh yeah, and I'm going to talk about this too. We're just finalized a deal today. We are an elite Adidas team. So if you see our uniforms are Adidas, so we've got a program and a partnership with Adidas. We're the only school in Arizona that they targeted because of our success, both on and off the field. And we're going to be featured in an upcoming marketing campaign, a $25 million marketing campaign, television commercials and print ads, where you'll see actors wearing the Saguaro uniform and the Saguaro helmet competing against another top program, Long Beach Poly. Many of you may have heard of that program. They're one of the elite national high school football teams. It's going to be very exciting. So you'll see our jerseys. It'll be great exposure for our program, and really excited to be partnered with them. And it's another great thing going on right now for our team. So. Coach Rubin is the man behind the scenes, and I want to make sure his name is called again because for as much credit as the head coach of the team gets, there's many other assistants and staff members that make a big impact, and none bigger than Coach Rubin. So just wanted to recognize him real quick and let him know that we're proud of him. And again, just thank everybody for all your support. Hopefully we can be back here again next year talking about the same thing and keeping this win streak going. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Yeah, really.
Way great, guys.
Hey.
Thank you, Jason. And, you know, I was waiting because last year when you won, you proposed to your wife. And so I was waiting to see what was going to happen this year. And, you know, you didn't pull any rabbits out of the hat, though. So.
I was asked that question about 50 times, and everybody thought I was going to make a baby announcement this year. And I said, if I was that skilled to be able to plan that. Thank you guys again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam President, members of the board, that concludes our celebrations this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. The next item on the agenda is public comment. That would be item 11, and I have one card that was turned in. Julie Sidniowski.
Good evening, board. And I'd like to thank Dr. Peterson, the school board, and Sandra for the opportunity to address you this evening. Actually, this is a comment on behalf of a very proud association in our district, and that is Scottsdale Education Association. We would like to thank you, Danny Brown, for your years of service, not just as a board member, but as someone who has been committed to our community and supporting the Scottsdale values that we all strive for, specifically the decisions you've made as a school board member to support students first. Also, the care and concern that you have shown to teachers, that is greatly appreciated. And I wish you the best in your next challenging endeavor, and I wanted to thank you.
I want to thank the teachers. Thank you.
At this time, we'll have superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. There's a few pages of comments I'd like to share with you. We've had a lot happening in the last month and a half. One event is somewhat of an emotional event, and that is on December 5th, one of our bus drivers collapsed in the bathroom at the bus yard. Several bus drivers heard what they thought was someone falling, and they sprang into action. They quickly called 911. Since the door was locked, it couldn't be broken down. One of the drivers actually went through a vent to unlock the door. They rescued the individual. CPR was quickly administered on the bus driver, and they continued until the paramedics arrived. The bus driver was transported to Scottsdale Healthcare, and I truly want to thank all of those who jumped into action to help your coworker. Because of their quick actions, they saved his life. We will be recognizing them on our January board meeting, but I just thought it was important to show that our folks take care of each other, and that was a huge deal. So they will be coming back in January, but it was amazing. He's recovering. He was actually in bad shape. They put him into a medically induced coma to get him recovered. So the good news is he's on the road to recovery. Next, SUSD ranked as the 8th best school district in Arizona under the 2015 niche rankings. We were ranked the 8th best according to our high rankings. It indicates the district contains great schools with exceptional teachers, which we know, sufficient resources, a diverse set of high-achieving students who rate their experiences very highly. The next exciting celebration and comment I would like to do is regarding another incredible educator we have in Scottsdale schools. That's Mr. Richard Maxwell. It was announced this past week that Richard Maxwell, who is the creator of the groundbreaking contemporary music and sound program at Arcadia High School, has been named one of the top 10 finalists for the Music Educator Awards presented by the Grammys. This was an award that started a year ago. It's in its second year. This year they had over 7,000 nominations from across the country, and out of 7,000, our very own Richard Maxwell is in the top 10. I'm still cheering so him and I can go to the Grammys together right after the first of the year. But he deserves it. His kids are doing great things, and we're very, very proud that was named this past week. Also, the Rodell Exemplary Principal Initiative, Amy Uchaz, our principal at Pima Elementary School, has been named a semifinalist in the Rodell Exemplary Principal Initiative. Based on her proven leadership and excellent record of high academic achievement, the Rodell Foundation is proud to count Mrs. Amy Uchaz as one of Arizona's best educational leaders, and we truly believe that she is. So we wish her congratulations and good luck. The City of Scottsdale had an inaugural Citizens Fire Academy, and our own CFO, Daniel O'Brien, represented Scottsdale schools in a 6-week training program at the Citizens Fire Academy. He concluded his training with participating in extinguishing a car fire and entering a smoky building, just like he does as he works on our budget. So, Danny, we want to say congratulations to you for finishing that. And we were pleased that the City of Scottsdale Fire Department reached out and asked us to be an inaugural member of that activity. Back at the end of October, we had the Scottsdale Gallery Association Art Walk, and our school students were well represented. And I've mentioned it before, but I need to repeat it, because students from Arcadia, Chaparral, Coronado, Desert Mountain, and Saguaro High School had artwork exhibited at the Scottsdale Gallery Association's 40th anniversary Art Walk in Old Town Scottsdale. We had live performances by our high school students, and it was amazing the amount of comments that we had from the people participating, how incredible talented our students are, and how they wanted to buy their artwork. So it was really a great event and a great evening, and we appreciate that. Next, we had the 27th Annual Clean Air Campaign Awards. Our district received top honors in the event that was sponsored by the Maricopa County Air Quality Division. We received the top honors in the Best Trip Reduction Program for a public employer of more than 500 employees, and Hohokam received the top honors in the People Choice category for the Best Bulletin Board. Great work by everyone. Lisa Marcelli and Barb Shepard and Hohokam's bulletin board designer Tracy Egert all did great work. And what's important is we were up against the top employers in Maricopa County who have large budgets to do these types of things. We did ours on a shoestring, and we beat them. So we're pretty proud of that. Also, U of A came up this last month to Chaparral High School to celebrate the Yes event, and Chaparral was awarded the Arizona Cup. This cup is presented to the top high school in the state of Arizona that has the highest incoming freshman GPA averages. And Chaparral had the highest average. What's more exciting was on the buses that came up from Tucson were the actual deans of the colleges. And they came up and they gave out over 75 students they recognized that had a 3.27 grade average or higher, and there was a total of about 145 letters of acceptance that were given that day to seniors at Chaparral High School. So great work happening at Chaparral. Our marching bands on November 15th participated in the state marching band competition. There was 3 divisions, and in Division 3, Scottsdale had 2 bands, Chaparral and Coronado High School. Coronado, under the direction of Dr. Schultz-Bennett, finished 3rd and received the Caption Award for Outstanding Visual Performance. And Chaparral, under the direction of Mrs. Jennifer Moreau, finished 2nd and received the Caption Recognition for Percussion and General Effect. So again, great things happening not only on the athletic fields, but in the performance arenas and in the academic classrooms. This week is the Hour of Code Week. In Scottsdale schools, we have several schools that are participating in the Hour of Code. They include Desert Canyon Elementary, Hopi, Laguna, Pueblo, Redfield, Taman, Cheyenne Traditional, Copper Ridge, Cocopah, Mojave, Desert Mountain High School, and Chaparral High School. The Hour of Code is 1 hour to introduce computer science to our students. The Hour of Code is designed to show that anyone can learn the basics of coding. This week has been set aside for that, and all of our students are doing great jobs in the classroom, participating and getting excited about actually doing computer coding, which will make a huge difference as they move into college. We also have this weekend coming up the first LEGO Robotics Tournament. We are honored to have several schools that have advanced to the state tournament. It will be this weekend at ASU, starting at 9 o'clock. The teams are the Kiva Mindstorm Recyclers, the Laguna Robo Eagles, the Navajo Robo Buffs, the Yavapai Thunderbolts, the Mountainside Super Cougar Grenadiers, and Got Cookies, a Girl Scout troop from Pueblo Elementary School. The tournament's going to be held, the original tournament to qualify for state was hosted November 22nd at Mojave, and what was really exciting was our Saguaro students actually coached and mentored in the tournament. So Michael Majerson and Tino Velez received the Young Adult Mentor Awards. Glenn Pace was there as a referee, and Danielle Mara was the tournament director. I'd like to thank all of the coaches and their mentors for their work with our students. Good luck at the tournament Saturday, and I will see you there. We're looking for good things to come out of all the work that our robotic students are doing. Just a couple of final items to share with you. The SUSD finalists for the Super Bowl STEM Awards. The Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee came out with some Super Bowl Hero Awards, and Marilyn Williams, Devon Elementary, is being recognized as a finalist for the most dedicated STEM teacher. Navajo Elementary is being recognized as a finalist for the best STEM school, and Saguaro High School is being recognized as a finalist for the most innovative STEM club. So again, great things are happening in our classrooms. And then finally, Pima Elementary was selected to participate in the One World event. This is sponsored by the NFL and the Play 60 programs to celebrate diversity, culture, community responsibility, and building relationships. Students were paired with another One World student in our state, and on January 2016, these students will meet their pen pals at a hosted event full of music and cultural experiences through the games and the arts that will also be attended by NFL players. And finally, I would just like to say thank you to Mr. Denny Brown for his last 4 years of service in our school district. It's hard to believe that the 4 years has gone quick. Denny, to me, is truly an idea man. I'm going to miss my 7 o'clock phone calls because he calls me, and I can set my watch by 7 o'clock in the morning when he calls and says, David, I have an idea. And I'm like, oh, great, here we go. But Denny, thank you for all of your ideas. Thank you for caring about kids. And thank you for the TechLink program. Because of you, we have put hundreds of computers in the hands of children and families that would not have had the resources to have a computer at home. So thank you. We have a gift for you. It's a clock to always remember the time you've spent with us. Thank you, Denny.
I can't say anything. Awesome, dude.
Thanks, Denny. The next item is consent agenda. I'll just repeat the items that we're going to pull for further discussion. Item 13D, F, L, M, and N. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with removal of those items?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 5-0. And Mrs. Kirby, you pulled item 13D.
Okay, thank you. I pulled it as really to close the loop from the last meeting when I requested some enhancements to this section of our consent agenda that appears every month. And it's basically the new employments, the transfers, and the terminations. And so I just want to, since we now have an example, a real live example, I just wanted to make sure that it is what I think it is,
Okay.
just so we're all on the same page, and then let it go at that. So I had the example. It was it's on under new employments for, I think it's classified, transportation, bus aid, roving, and that's out of M&O. So that is the exact example of that I'm looking for. And I just want to make sure that this example is a new employee that wasn't originally built into the M&O budget, but is now budgeted. We're actually spending against that. So let me rephrase my question, because I didn't do that very well. So this is a new employee that was out of budget. Is that correct?
Madam President, Board Member Kirby. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
It is based on a child with special needs for their IEP that was put in place, so they needed an aide on the bus based on the IEP. But yes, it is one that was not in the original budget.
Okay, so what does roving mean?
Well, originally last time when we talked about if they're at a school, put a school.
Yeah.
But if they're not at a school and they do multiple schools, to put roving. So it means that they go to multiple schools. They're not just at one site.
But if this is a child with an IEP, would it not? If this individual was hired because of a child with an IEP, doesn't that child go to the same site?
It could, but sometimes some of the programs change or the students change based on whatever the team decides, so we put roving on it.
Okay. And then how was this person funded? Like, where did the dollars come from to fund this out of budget position?
Board Member Kirby, Madam President. New positions can be developed in several ways, so I'll kind of give you a whole review of it. So one is similar to this one. This is an IEP. So it's now a federal requirement through SPED that we have to fund them. So we work with SPED to determine if there are dollars that we can move around and stuff. This particular one is being funded out of what we call the overtime for transportation. Okay. So we move some funds from the overtime over. Okay. Other ones, and I'm looking at this, and I don't know.
You don't have to. That's okay. Because the other ones are out of nutritional services, and really, I'm focused on the M&O. So President Sneed's request to put with the funding source is actually it's very helpful because it helps narrow down. That's all the questions I had on that. Thank you.
Then can I have a motion to approve item 13D?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. The next item that I asked to pull was item 13F, approval of minutes for November 18th, and it's really just a typo that I just corrected, and it's toward the bottom of page 56 on our agenda. It said, Mrs. Sneed asked community to consider a tax credit donation to the district, but I know that tax credit donations don't go to the district, so I think I said directly to the school, and I just wanted to clarify that in the minutes. So Sandra can just she'll make a correction, and so I'd like to make a motion to amend the minutes. Sorry? Oh, Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you for pulling that. I had a typo also.
Okay.
But I lost it. Somewhere it said that I expressed concern about Navajo STEAM program matriculating up to Mojave. And in the minutes it says STEM at Mojave. It should say STEAM at Mojave. So add the A. Find it.
Mrs. Kirby also expressed caution in regard to Mojave becoming a STEM school.
Should say STEAM.
A STEAM school?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask again. I'll make motion to approve the minutes with the two items that we discussed amended.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes 5-0. The next item is item 13L, approve the renovation of the Educational Services Center, 9313 North 95th Way, Scottsdale, Arizona, 85258, for the relocation of the Information Technology Department through the Strategic Alliance for Volume Expenditure, SAVE contract. I just wanted to pull it for discussion for a little clarification.
Yes, good evening, Madam President, governing board members. The item L, as you see here, is an item based upon the progress of relocation of departments from this facility here at 44th Street to other facilities within the district. And the funding that you see here is related to bond funds that are savings from preceding projects. And so that applies to basically L, M, and N.
Okay, so that we'll discuss both of those then. Let's see, I wanted L and N. So any other discussion on that?
Can I throw M in there? Because it's along the same lines. They're all in the same bucket.
Let's do the three of those together.
Considering that they're all coming out of the same fund, I was going to pull all three of those and just ask the broader question of how much was left in that bond fund, how much, I mean, we can do the math based upon what's in the consent agenda of what's projected to be spent. What's the balance? And refresh my memory, that needed to be spent by the end of this calendar year. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam President, Board Member Kirby. We ended up having savings of just under $2 million when we finished all of our projects for the middle school bond. The law requires us to have those encumbered by the end of this month. Right now, with these projects, we are totally encumbered, and so there will be $0 balance at the end of the month. So we are utilizing all the savings.
And what happens, what does the law say if we come in under budget, under the encumbrances?
The money then would, because we're beyond that time period, we would go ahead and use it to pay down debt at that point. So if let's say we saved $10,000, we would apply it back to the bond debt.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm assuming that we have any savings couldn't be spent on additional identified projects after the end of the year.
No.
Correct?
No, they have to be encumbered by the end of this month. And then any savings that would happen, say if it finishes in March or April, would then be used in the calculation to lower the debt service based off of the July and January payment of next fiscal year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Before we vote on those three, I want to mention that items 13L and 13N are both just incorrectly noted as action items rather than consent. So I just want to get approval from the board that Sandra can change the agenda and make those consent items instead of action items. So can I have a motion to approve amending items L and N to reflect that they are consent items rather than action items? I make the motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, and then for the items 13L, M, and N, I'll make a motion to approve all three of those items.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion's passed 5-0. So we have that cleared up.
Excuse me, Madam President. Anyone out there driving a red Kia Rondo that's in the back lot, the lights are on. We just want to make sure if anyone's driving that, you don't get out of here and have the battery run down. So if that's yours, please make sure get the lights turned off. Thanks, James.
The next item on the agenda is item 14, information discussion items. A is overview of the National Board certification process and upcoming changes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Our presentation is, we're going to have an introduction by Dr. Andy Forlis, and one of our new individuals that has been helping us in the curriculum and professional development arena, Cammie, is going to do the presentation for us, and we're pretty excited. Cammie's here for the first time, and so she is looking forward to sharing with you.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra. What a great opportunity to be able to share an overview of the amazing work that teachers are doing in our district related to National Board certification. As Dr. Peterson mentioned, Cammie Anderson is a professional learning coordinator within our district who supports National Board certification, and so she is the appropriate leader to be able to share with you. So thank you for welcoming her on her first journey with us this evening.
Click here, or you can click here. Okay.
Okay, welcome, Cammie.
All right. Thank you. I'm hoping this PowerPoint, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on specifically in Scottsdale and then also on the National Board, how they've been changing the process. So hopefully it will give you a broad overview of things. First of all, to give you a little background into National Board, it was actually established in 1987, and it was a response to a landmark report in 1983 entitled A Nation at Risk, which actually detailed what they called a rising tide of mediocrity. And so the National Board was created, and it's important to know it was actually created for teachers by teachers, and it is a voluntary process. Who can become National Board certified? They require that a teacher be teaching for 3 years. It's available for teachers from pre-K through 12th, but also they allow librarians, and there's also certification for counselors. And there are 25 different components that they can choose to be certified in, and it ranges from age and content area. The funding for the National Board certification, Arizona is unique, and also SUD, in that we provide lots of opportunities for teachers, and some of these is through the Arizona K through 12 Center. They actually provide money, the cost for the program, and then the SUSD Foundation also grants $10,000 a year to help out with that. And then upon National Board certification, teachers in the district receive a $3,000 stipend for the life of their certification, which is for 10 years. Across the nation, to give you an idea, there are 106,000 across the nation. In the state of Arizona, there are 1,078, and SUSD currently has 89. It's a huge percentage compared to the nation. They rank in the top 5 of the school districts in Arizona. Last year, they were among the top 3, and it's important to note they were 1 behind Paradise Valley, so there was 1 teacher in between the 2nd and 3rd. This can show you basically where all of our teachers are, so it's kind of a good mix, balanced. This kind of shows you throughout the years, starting in 1998 when we had our first National Board Certified Teacher of 1, and then this 2014 we had 15 certified. Specifically, you can see from 2011 through 2014 that there's been a steady growth in the number of National Board Certified teachers that we have. And it's important why would we want our teachers to be National Board Certified? Well, the research has some great findings. First of all, National Board Certified teachers, it shows that their students outperform other teachers who are non-National Board Certified by 7 to 15 percentage points. They say that that's the average of a student staying in school for 1 extra month. Also, and this should say 9th and 10th grade math teachers in particularly showed a greater improvement even. And then also it's targeting specific students. They even find a greater increase with special needs students and also minority students. They seem to demonstrate higher learning with the National Board Certified teachers. And then it's not just about the student growth, but also we see that teachers have a great opportunity in leadership, and it also shows how much they affect not only the students, but the other teachers, even to the point that other teachers they mentor and how they provide support with them, their students also show achievement gains. They also just outperform their peers in their knowledge, and they have a great influence on the schools where they're at and the culture and the professional learning that goes on overall there. And in SUSD, we know to kind of take advantage of that teacher leadership. And so when teachers certify, they actually sign an agreement of ways that they will contribute back to the schools and leadership. And listed here are some of the ways. A lot of it has to do with mentoring for, number one, other candidates, for teachers that are new to the district, for brand new teachers in their first year of teaching. They're on committees. Several of them are at the high school level, I'm trying to say, part of, leading the English department heads and so forth. Another thing to note, this is not an easy process. The National Board is actually quite rigorous. Nationally, most teachers on their first attempt do not pass, 38 to 40% passing rate. Like I said, we do have a lot of support here. There's a cohort that meets every month. The Arizona K-12 Center has been great in providing services and helping them. And so our certification rate is 50 to 62%. However, it's also important to note that it's not just teachers who certify that get something great out of them. Though going through the process has shown that teachers do become better even when they don't initially certify the first or second rounds. It still shows that there are significant improvements. So in SUSD, here's what we have. Currently, we have 20 candidates for the 2014-2015 school year. There are another 31 candidates in waiting. These are candidates who are interested, but they first have to take what they call a pre-candidacy class where they learn a little bit more about it to make sure that that is something that they want to go through. And then we also have the possibility of having 29 advanced candidates. Like you saw on the slide before, the majority of the time, most of them don't pass the first round, so they do have another opportunity to try again. So we have 29 of them who have the possibility, if they choose to be advanced candidates. And these slides the next ones I have are taken straight from the National Board and the way they describe kind of the revisions and why they decided to revise the process. The first thing is they thought that they needed to remove barriers. They thought that there were a lot of things that the teachers were being asked to do that really didn't apply to whether or not they were an accomplished teacher. So that's kind of what stemmed the movement of changing. And there are two changes. The first thing is flexibility. With the flexibility, it used to be that teachers would there's 4 components they have to pass, and they would have to pass these 4 components in 1 year. That can be very stressful, especially with all the demands on a teacher. So one of the biggest changes is now they've extended it so teachers can take 3 years to complete the process. They can do a component or 2 components in a year to do that. Also, affordability, they've actually reduced the cost for National Board certification. This shows you what the 4 components are. And the last one it talked about, one of the things they ask is being effective and being a reflective teacher. And they try to do the same thing in their process of being reflective of the certification process and wanted to ensure that they were following that practice. And the last time that process was actually revised, if you see this, was in 2001. So since the beginning of the history of National Board, this will be the 3rd time that it is revised. And there are some things that aren't changing. The standards have stayed the same. It's the same core propositions, same architecture of accomplished teaching, same performance-based peer review model, and the same knowledge and commitment to student learning. So those things haven't changed. So they have those same belief system is still there. And what does this mean for the candidates for 2013-14? Well, we had 15 recently that certified from the 2013-2014. They were part of the old model. And then within that, as I talked about the retake candidates, they will fall under the old model. So next year, they will still stay with the old model and practice so they can certify in the next year. However, There are new candidates for the 2014-2015. They started March of 2014, and they will actually have to take 3 years to complete. They cannot complete it in 1 year because right now the National Board, they only have certain standards available, and they kind of have a rollout of that. And right here, this shows you the rollout. So right now, our candidates, they're only allowed to do component 1 and component 2. Next year, the component 3 will be open to them, and then the following year, component 4 will be open to them. So within the progression, when I showed you how many teachers we had, it's likely that you'll see a drop, but it has to do with the revision of the National Board, not with, that our teachers aren't certifying, because they will not be able to certify for another 3 years. And to end, just in some celebrations, like I said, the last cohort under the old model, we had 15 new National Board certified teachers, and then we also had 2 teachers who recertified, who have been under that certification for 10 years. And then we still have 29 advanced candidates that hopefully we'll see in the next couple years receive their certification as well. So, any questions?
Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you for your presentation. Nice to meet you, by the way. I have a question probably actually for Danny. He's like, oh, you can field it if you know the answer, but I'm gonna. So going back to the slide about the revised assessment rollout, if I understood correctly, we're going to see a gradual decline of National Board certified teachers, and all of a sudden it's going to boom, shoot back up.
Yeah.
So financially speaking, I just did the quick math. It's about a $250,000 investment in annual stipends. It varies year to year, but we'll see that start to decline, and then it'll probably jump back up to another $250,000. So that's a big chunk of money over the next 3 years to consider in the budget.
Yes. Board Member Kirby, yes. Remember, they're certified for 10 years. So the ones that we have now will continue to get the $3,000 stipend every year until they have to be recertified. So I don't know exactly which ones are in their year 1, 2, or 3, or 4, but every year when we do work with that, we work with Dr. Forlis and Karen Benson and the team, and now Cammie, now that she's on board, to say how many are you projecting, how many do we know are we going to be retiring, and then we set that budget on about as actual as we can. So we don't just go in and say it's $1 million every year and then this is what it's spent. We try to get as actual as we can because we know who's in the pipeline and who's coming.
Okay. You have it projected out? I mean, do you track, do you have a master schedule that tracks, here's where everyone is, and here, these are the people in year 6, year 7, year 8, and you're going to see that get smaller and smaller? And
I do not. Finance doesn't have that. HR, Kim Dodds, and Dr. Forlis would have that because we can see where they've been certified. It's uploaded inside Visions.
Okay. I mean, and I know in the scheme of things, $250,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, but it is. And to get that tighter and to really project, we could probably find some temporary other uses for those dollars if we're not going to spend them here, as long as we are forecasting that it's going to come back and we are going to have to spend in the future. It'd just be nice to find some good uses for those dollars in the interim.
Absolutely. Board Member Kirby, we can definitely do a little bit more detailed work within that budget with Dr. Forlis and Karen Benson in the springtime when it comes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jackson, please.
Thank you for your presentation, and I, like Board Member Kirby, it's nice meeting you. I guess this is more of a curiosity question. How much time, I mean, is this, do you have an idea how much time a teacher spends, hours, to go through the from start to finish on this?
You know, I've never had an estimate of actual time, although I've talked to a lot of them and they've told me that there are lots of tiers involved and lots of hours rewriting essays and looking at data and doing that. And they'll spend, there are some times where it's a whole weekend they go and all they're doing is focusing on looking at that data, revising, you know, their lessons and trying to figure out how to best work with that. So I would estimate, I mean, there's days involved.
Right, and in the process, is it 3 years from typically? You went through this. It's just remind me.
Well, that's one of the changes. It used to be they would try to certify under there's 4 different components where they have to have portfolios and show information. They write essays. They take assessments on that. And now that's one of the revisions, is they've made it a flexibility to now they can have 3 years to actually complete that. So they don't have to do all of it in 1 year. Now, the ones who are currently, they don't have the option of doing it in 1 year because they have not actually rolled out all the revised components yet. But once they're all out in 2017, then teachers, if they want to, they could feasibly do all of them in 1 year if they wanted to.
Okay, and this is all done, obviously, evenings outside of their...
Correct.
Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive. Sounds like they're getting a fair amount of support from their principals and, when possible, for all of this. Is that a fair statement?
That's definitely a fair statement,
Yeah,
yes.
wonderful. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, here in the school district, we're always celebrating folks reaching their maximum potential. We want everyone. We talk a lot about students,
yes.
But it's so exciting to see our teachers reaching for that other potential. And I just want to thank you and thank them for all that hard work and dedication to our district and to their personal success. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to make a quick comment for the teachers who have gone through this. I was out at an community event, and somebody that used to work in our special ed department but has retired came up to me and told me about 4 of our individuals that have met every single Sunday all year long. And the 4 of them did it. They committed to do it together, and all 4 of them passed. And when somebody just comes up to you out of the blue and says, wow, I can't believe how many teachers from our district made their national board certification, she just told me, you know, how much effort it takes to do that. And it's nice to know there are people out in the community that recognize that too. And as board members, we need to do that. I also just want to put a quick thanks to the SUSD Foundation, because I know they made that commitment a few years back that they would help fund this, because it's not only a lengthy process, but it's also very expensive. And so we want to thank them. And just the idea that these teachers come and make a promise to give back is amazing, because then you know that the ripple effect is going to help a lot more students. Is there any correlation in our district? This is just curiosity. Do we have nationally board certified teachers who have also gone through the career ladder program? I mean, it seems like there's such a good fit there.
Madam President, yes, Cammie's new and doesn't really understand the history of Career Ladder. Actually, the program design of Career Ladder was to support national board certification. So teachers who were in learning communities through Career Ladder, they had a choice to join national board, and then they were supported by a national board facilitator to get them through that process. So that was their Career Ladder project, was to work towards national board certification.
That was just out of curiosity. Thank you so much for the presentation. The next information discussion item is item 14B, grades 1 through 8, fall benchmark.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. McNeil is going to share with you our grade K, or 1 through 8, benchmark results for comparing last year at this time to this year. We have not received our high school benchmarks yet, but you will see as he takes us through this presentation, our teachers are doing great work.
I would agree, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, I have the privilege to present our fall benchmark review. While doing that, I will do a couple other things. We will compare them this fall's to last fall's. I will talk about the collaboration and how the benchmarks evolved, our collaboration from district curriculum folks with teachers. And then finally, I'll go over a little bit about the AZ merit and the blueprint for the new test coming down the chute in the spring. So I'm happy to report all the decisions we've made and the work that our teachers are doing with our curriculum folks under Dr. Benson's guidance. So let's get started. I'm going to do everything I can to make this exciting and fun. Numbers usually aren't, so I apologize up front. Okay, what we have in front of us is two bar graphs, if you will, the reading benchmarks for grade 1, 2013 and 2014. On the left will be 2013, and on the right is 2014. On the bottom, you will see the categories FFB, approaching, meeting, exceeding, and percent passing. Percent passing, the light blue bar, represents the combination of meeting and exceeding. On the Ames test, as well as our benchmarks, meeting and exceeding basically means passing the test. As you can see, approaching and FFB to the left is defined as not passing the test. What schools and school districts and anybody that's been involved in the accountability game knows the importance of increasing meets and exceeds and decreasing fall fars below. That's how you play the game. As you can see, in 2013, we have a percent passing of 88.5% and 93.78% for 2014. This is an increase of 5.28, and interesting enough, if we look at the exceeds categories from 2013, the purple bar, we can see significant gains in students from 26.65% to 51.55%. That's an increase of 24.9% of first graders in reading that aren't just passing the test, but they're rocking it. So that's the information for reading benchmark 1 comparison 13 to 14. As we move to math, again, the same rules apply. We can look at the meet and exceeds bar, 80.86% to 85.54. This is an increase of 4.68%. Here we did not see the numbers at the FFB decrease, but you will see some movement within the bars. Reading benchmark grade 2, 13 to 14, we will see the meet and exceeds light bar go from 88.57% to 88.51. It's staying consistently high. We did not see an increase there, as well as in the FFB category, it decreased slightly. Math benchmark for grade 2, we will see the percent passing increased at a rate of 7.53%. From 84.12 to 91.65. Interesting enough, if we look at the exceeding here from fall to fall, we will see an increase of 15.50 from 48.83 to 64.34. Also, we did see a decrease here in our FFBs from 3.11% to 1.44. So we got all three categories that we look for there. The increase in the meets and the exceeds, the increase in the exceeds, and the decrease in the FFB. That's good work. If we move to reading grade 3, last year's percent passing was 88.81%. This year was 89.2, a slight increase at 0.39. If you look at the rest of the bars across it, we see an overall similarity with respect to numbers. This is an interesting year because we think about last year's legislation on Move On When Reading, and I know that our elementary principals are wondering, I wonder how last year's third graders did as fourth graders this year. So it's important to know that these are two different grades and two different kids. These are last year's third graders and this year's third graders. So if you wanted to see a longitudinal look, we would look at last year's third graders and this year's fourth graders. Let's move on to third grade math. We see we have 82.82% passing to 91.96. That's an increase at 9.14%. We see that our exceeds categories skyrocketed as well in third grade math at 23.34%. We did see our FFBs drop to 1.94%. So here we did see all three indicators that we're looking for when we're looking for how our kiddos are doing. Here's the fourth grade the fourth grade reading numbers, if you will. And if I'm looking at last year's third graders in reading, it was 88.81, and this year's fourth graders is at 89.92. So we did see that the kids, the same kids, last year's third graders and this year's fourth graders on the fall benchmark increased slightly, just a little extra data fun for anybody that is really crunching the numbers. As we look at our reading benchmarks, we see we went from 89.92 to 91.68%. That's an increase of 1.76, and the rest of the categories look pretty consistently high. If we move to fourth grade mathematics, we see that we went from a passing rate at 77.55% to 89.36. That's pretty significant, and an increase at 11.81%. The exceeds category is pretty impressive as well. We went from 41.87% to 63.89. That's an increase of 22.02%. So we have a lot more fourth graders this year exceeding the fall benchmarks than we did for fourth graders last year. We also saw a significant drop in our FFB percentages from 6% down to 1.53%. We saw all three areas that we wanted to see. We moved to our fifth grade reading. As you can see, our percent passing, the light blue bar, went from 91 to 93%. That's an increase of 2.19%. Our exceeds category increased slightly at 6.09%, and our FFB rate dropped 0.94%. So there again, we saw all three indicators that we want to be looking for. Math benchmarks for fifth grade, we see we went from 80.66% to 86.38%. That's an increase at 5.72%. We see our exceeds category, wow, 36% and some change to 60%. That's an increase at 23.52%. Our FFB categories dropped from 7.76% to 4.23%. There again, once again, we see all three indicators that teachers and principals and district administrators like to see. Let's move to our sixth grade reading benchmark. We go from 89.31% passing to 92.71%. We see that is an increase at 3.4%. Our exceeds category stayed roughly the same, an increase of 0.01, and the FFB did decrease slightly. So pretty good work there as well. If we move to our math for sixth grade, we can compare last year's meet and exceeds from 77.55% to 80.76%. That's an increase at 3.21%. Our exceeds category, once again, increased to 12.75 from 36.5 to 46%, and our FFB category dropped significantly at 4.72%. All three indicators were met there as well. That's exciting. Reading benchmark for our grade 7, 91% passing to 99% passing. That's an increase at 8.17%. And we did see some decreases there, but a lot to celebrate in that 99% passing is pretty impressive for anything that you're looking at. That's hard to beat, obviously, 100. Math benchmarks grade 7, 75.27% passing to 80%. That's an increase at 4.88, and our FFB categories decreased from 9.13 to 4.79. That's a decrease at 4.34%. We're almost there, guys. Reading benchmark grade 8, 13 to 14, we see we were at 84.6% passing to 92% and 0.44. That's an increase of 7.84%. Our decrease category did drop from 4.31 to 1.89. That's a decrease at 2.42%. Much to celebrate there as well. This one is super duper significant in that we're looking at math at 8th grade. We know lots of conversations about what's going on in mathematics at the middle school, and this is something that I know our middle school principals and math teachers should be running down the hall celebrating about. If we look at our exceed rate last year from 35.12%, for our meets and exceeds from 71.88% to 92.22%, we saw an increase at 20.34%. The exceeds category increased from 35.12 to 54.44. That's almost a 20% increase. And then you look at the FFB that decreased from 17 down to significantly small numbers. That's almost a 20% increase. So we moved a lot of kids in our 8th grade mathematics. So kudos to everybody that's doing the great work there. I hope that was exciting as the number parts of this conversation. Okay, now that we have seen the great results, so let's look at how this year's benchmark creation occurred. Let's remember, in years past, all of our information systems, which would be our curriculum maps and our benchmarks, have been aligned to the Ames test. Knowing that the Ames test was going away this year, we needed to create a plan to make sure that our teaching and learning and our assessing is in line what our teachers believe we should be teaching, as well as what we're going to be assessed by and held accountable by in the spring. So what did we do? In the late spring and early summer, we pulled in our vendor and we met with them and we decided to make a change in our benchmark review. We decided to look to the future and be brave and to succeed from what many of the other districts were doing in the past, as well as ourselves, which was align ourselves to the Ames test, which was smart. Knowing that the Ames test was not going to be around this year, we decided to refocus what our benchmarks were going to be on, seeing how in Scottsdale for the last 3 years, our teachers have been teaching more Common Core-like. So for the last 3 years, we kind of been trapped under 2 different systems. We're being held accountable by the state with the Ames test based on these standards, but at the same time, looking to the future, we needed to get our teachers ready for the Common Core test, so there might have been a little disconnect and some concern by our teachers, and real concern that we're being held accountable, but we're teaching something different. So maybe perhaps value in results were questioned and valid. So this summer, we decided to align our blueprints to a nonprofit organization called Achieve the Core. And Achieve the Core is a nonprofit organization that was founded by the lead writers of the Common Core standards. And it was mainly aligned to what the PARCC test was going to look like. So we decided to move forward with that, and it was brave and it was the right move. From that, we moved forward to our curriculum mapping with our K-5 teachers to get ready for this move. So on May 13th, 2014, our curriculum folks in reading and math met with our K-5 teachers across the district, looked at what the curriculum map or what they're going to be teaching all year should look like. They broke it down for focuses for each trimester. They looked at which standards should be assessed at the fall benchmark and the spring benchmark, and they also looked at supplemental resources, curriculum, reading materials, hands-on materials, things that will help them be successful. Great work. On September 3rd, 2014, we brought teachers together to align our fall and spring benchmarks to the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards, and we looked at the Achieve research to help guide our way. Let's remember that in May and September, we did not know what the test was going to be. We just found out a month ago. So we knew the way to move was to move away from assessing to the state standards and the Ames-like, but moving towards Common Core type thinking, if you will. So after curriculum mapping and benchmark reviews, it is safe to say that I believe our pacing guides, and many believe our benchmarks or checkpoints along the way, and our pre and post test at the K-5 levels are all aligned to what we ultimately will be held accountable to someday, i.e. the A to F grades, if you will. Let's move on to 6-8, teacher collaboration, getting ready for 2014-15. Again, brought teachers together with our curriculum folks, our amazing resources, and brought in the experts from the classroom to talk about benchmark reviews on June 2nd. They talked about strategies to address each standards, how they're going to do it. On November 12th, they brought in people to talk about post-test reviews. Let's make sure that teacher classification and our rating, if you will, is aligned to our benchmarks as well as our curriculum maps. They reviewed standards that were being assessed and reviewed weights of each of the standards. And the weighting is very, very important because, as you will see later in the presentation, blueprints dictate what the test looks like. So our teachers and our curriculum folks are very smart in looking at a test and knowing what areas are going to be assessed and weighting or having more question in one area than another. On the Ames test, for example, there might have been 5 questions on algebra on the 4th grade test. Well, we better make sure that our test during the year, 5 out of 20, if you will, that 25% of our test is asking the same type questions. So our teachers and our curriculum people are very, very thoughtful about weighting the test so it looks like what they're going to be held accountable to. All right, this is a blueprint here, and this is brand spanking new. This is the AZ Merit. The AZ Merit is our selected test. Thus, the work of our benchmarking, our pre and post tests, and our curriculum maps need to be kind of aligned to this because this is the new test. Let's look at this document. Interesting. We have grades, all the grades stated from left to right, all the way down. We have minimum and maximums. We have strands. Strands are areas or concept areas or things that should be taught. The minimum and the maximum is interesting. And first looking at it, I'm like, why do they have minimum and maximum? So in grades 3, in the upper left corner, reading standards for literature, minimum 26%, maximum 35%. Why? Okay. Some people are going to be taking the test online, and some people are going to be taking paper pencil. So there will be a difference on what or how much is being weighted depending on which test you take. This is brand new territory for us because Ames was always paper pencil, so the 3rd grade Ames test said this is how much there's going to be in number operations, this is how much there's going to be in geometry, and this is how much is going to be on something else. Here all of a sudden we're sitting there going, how much, should we focus on everything or how are things going to be weighed? Very, very interesting. If you look in the bottom left corner, you will see listening standards will only be assessed on the computer-based assessments. Again, what does that mean? Well, we can't do listening on a paper pencil assessment, so it's only going to be on the computer. But is that going to be easier or is that going to be harder? Lots of unknowns. I find very interesting the bottom middle to the right where it talks about percentage of points by depth of knowledge level. Through our work under teacher classification in Senate Bill 1040 and holding teachers accountable based on student achievement data that is valid and reliable, we have learned a lot about asking really good questions. There's really easy questions and there's really hard questions. And this represents that this test will have DOK level 1. 10 to 20% of the questions are going to be really easy. 50 to 60% are going to be at that level 2. 15 to 25% are going to be at that level 3, and the super duper hard ones might be at level 4, and if you can see, it's going to be in the writing area. So again, teachers and principals need to be smart about, and district curriculum folks, looking at, oh my gosh, if our benchmarks aren't aligned to this, we might have some troubles. Or if we're not teaching what the test is going to be at the end of the year, our accountability or how we're viewed might be skewed. I think it's also to point out that the benchmark data is only one set of data that to make good decisions about teaching and learning. I just want to emphasize that because I think it's very, very important that I'm not saying we're teaching to the test, but let's be real here. We have a blueprint that exists, and it's telling us what the test is going to look like. This is not new to us. In 2002, with No Child Left Behind and the oncoming of the Ames test, the blueprints have always been available for schools to map out what it looks like. So kudos to AZ Merit for getting this to us early because the test is months away. Okay, so here we go. Lots to go on here. Let's remember, though, too, that the vendor is AIR, which is the American Institute for Research, and the test is the AZ Merit. Whew. We were very significant in looking at some things from the blueprint, from the AZ Merit to what we believe is important in Scottsdale. For example, in K-5 English Language Arts, Our focus on curriculum maps, benchmarks, and our blueprints show that we emphasis on literature at 50% and informational text at 50%. These strands will be emphasized equally in grades 3 to 5. SUSD is in complete alliance with the AZA Merit Test in these areas. Things to note as we transition to this test: the language arts standards on our current ATI test tend to be standalone vocabulary questions. They will either be vocabulary questions within a reading passage, will be assessed based on how our students are using spelling, punctuation, and grammar on the writing parts of the test. The AZA Merit Test includes a small emphasis on listening, like I said, 0 to 13%. We believe this range will exist to allow for the paper and pencil test that I mentioned before. In our English language arts, 6 to 8, if you're looking at those areas, our focus is reflected as well. We're looking at reading literature and informational text from standards 1 to 10, and language standards from 4 to 5. Writing is integrated within reading. One thing that we're learning from this is we need to bring back to the forefront the question of writing. I know that many principals and many teachers out there in the trenches are wondering, I wonder if I'm doing enough writing, because this test is all about writing. And so I know we have lots of conversations to occur from a district perspective of, are we doing enough? And we're going to find out very, very shortly. Things to note, like in the elementary 3-5 ELA, the language standards on the current ATI test are standalone. The embedded assessments in 6-8 that we have in our springboard curriculum is in step with the writing that will be assessed. So in talking to our 6-8 district curriculum folks, they believe that what we have currently in the springboard curriculum will do good work for us in the AZ Merit test for grades 6 through 8. I will be one area that we probably need more emphasis on in the grades 9 to 11 is writing. Like I said, that is directly related to the analysis of both literary and informational text. Okay, let's go to math. Math is a little bit different. On English language arts, they were called strands, and now in mathematics, they're called domains. But we will see basically the same type of thing. We see minimum and maximums. We see percentage of points of depth of knowledge, and we know that approximately 70% of the assessment will be on a major content within the grade level course. Just a couple things I want to point out because I think it's significant. This is how Scottsdale has made it their own. Let's face it, Scottsdale, we are our own, and we can't completely conform to what somebody out there is saying because we're smarter than that. We know what our data shows us, and we need to be smart about it. In being in the district for 3 years, I know that algebra is the gatekeeper. I'm not the middle school or secondary guy, but algebra is the gatekeeper. We know we have struggles with algebra passing rates. So we were very thoughtful in how we weighed things. In K-5 math, at grades 3, SUSD placed more emphasis on measurement and data and geometry. So if you look at grade 3 math, what did I say? Measurement and data, we see that the minimum is 26% and the maximum is 30%. We were very thoughtful and purposeful in making sure that our benchmarks weight this at 35.5%. We know that this is an interesting area for us, and we know that we will reap the benefits by, instead of measuring or putting it at 26% of our benchmarks, weighting it, we went a little bit higher. We all know our troubles with fractions in grades 4 and 5. And do they know their multiplication facts? Can't do fractions if you don't know your facts. So we were very purposeful at grades 4 to put more emphasis on numbers and operations, fractions. If you see the numbers there, 29% and 33%, we weighted our benchmarks at 37. So we weren't going to take the chance that if the test did show either paper, pencil, or computer, that 33% of the test in that grade 4 is going to be on fractions. We made sure that we were above the 34 or the 33. We're shooting it at 37. So our benchmarks is 37% focused on fractions. Grade 5 as well, we hit the fractions as well. We knew that that was important. We went from, where's that? Algebraic thinking, 38 to 42%. We weighted it at 44.5%. Math gains may be present in our benchmark data due to more schools focusing on math. If you think back to the numbers that I presented, math jumped out as we saw greater gains, especially in the 8th grade, and there could be a variety of reasons for that. I know that a lot of our building principals, like I mentioned on Thursday, are focusing more on math. The conversation is about mathematics, and that's good that our schools are focusing on that. You will see that reflected in our Title I plans at the title schools. You will see that in the things that we do called instructional rounds to help our principal professional development, where I walk with, or Kelly Davis, our K-5 math curriculum person. We walk with principals to walk through these classrooms to help them look for great things in mathematics. And you will see perhaps that we were purposeful as a district putting more FTEs or more focused FTEs in our 6th to 8th grade mathematics areas. Okay, let's look at this. This is a result of our Thursday board meeting. We were talking about measures we need to really be focusing on. So I added this at the last minute, thus the reason why this PowerPoint is a little bit different than the one that was sent earlier. If we look at this, this is the increased percentages in meets and exceeds from 13 to 14. I know we talked a little bit about, is 3rd grade the year that we need to be looking at in certain things? Is it 5th grade? Is it 8th grade? So I pulled 3rd, 5th, and 8th. We want to see positive numbers here. In math, we saw a 9.14 increase in kids passing the test from last year's cohort to this year's cohort. In reading, we didn't see quite the jump, if you will. Could be a variety of reasons. We knew that the Move On When Reading initiative perhaps isn't counting this year, which it isn't. Did that, somehow affect how we did on the benchmarks, or is it just plainly that the test has changed as we went from a test that was created for the Ames test, and now it's focused more Common Core, if you will, or the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards. Mathematics increased 5.72, reading at grades 5, 2.19. Again, celebrating the work at the middle school for mathematics and reading. This next slide is a decrease in the FFBs that I mentioned. We want to see negative numbers here. Less kids not passing the test and being in the lower category. We did see only one area, the reading 3rd grade, where we did see an increase in that bottom band, and I know currently that principals are looking at those kids to make sure, wait a minute, we have more kids falling far below in 3rd grade reading this year than we did last year. Different kids, of course, but we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get them ready to be successful, to help the teachers. Is it about intervention? Is it about enrichment? What is it looking like? Same thing occurs in all of our other grade levels again. Principals and teachers coming together in data meetings to talk about what they're doing to help these kiddos. Again, mathematics, like I mentioned, the huge increase in exceeds. Here we see huge decreases in FFBs. Much to celebrate here. Okay, questions at this time? I hope I satisfied all 3 areas that I was looking for, and I hope I did it as exciting as possible.
Thank you so much for that, for the update. Can you talk to me about what you've seen after we did the Bridges program over the summer? Any direct correlation?
That's a middle and high school thing, so I'm going to yield to somebody.
I'm sorry.
Madam President, the Math Bridges program was the bridge from 8th grade to 9th grade math in our high schools. And so we will be, as soon as we have all of our data back from our high school benchmarks, we will do a similar presentation for you. Early indicators through lots of conversation indicate that we are seeing success, especially some schools with different levels of success based on their model that they have designed. So great success is happening at Arcadia High School, 2 teachers teaching simultaneously to really focus on individual needs of kids.
Thank you. I thought we had something between elementary and middle school as well.
Madam President, our goal for this year is last year was to take a look at the bridge from middle school to high school, take those lessons learned and apply them from 5th grade to 6th grade as the transition from elementary to middle school.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you.
And I do want to point out that the benchmark schedule is different for the elementary and the middle than the high school. The high school was done later than the elementary and middle school. We don't have those results back calculated. So when we do get those back, we will report out to you if you're interested in the 9th and 10th reading and math benchmark results as well. That's why they weren't part of this presentation.
Denny Brown.
Being Mr. Celebratory, I need to point out that here's with our larger class sizes, we're celebrating, we're getting better all the time, even with larger class sizes. This is quite an accomplishment for our teachers and for our administration and for the people that put the test together, obviously. This is a huge deal. To be here today under the circumstances, the financial circumstances we're in, is massive. And I just, I want to applaud all concerned. That's a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam President, Board Member Brown, I would agree with you 100%. I will publicly say that the benchmark tests are more difficult. We've changed. We've changed the depth of knowledge of the questions to get more Common Core-like, if you will, deeper thought or deeper thinking, deeper type of questions, more problem solving. And I think it's important. I mean, thoughtful, deliberate. Celebrating the work that the teachers are doing and the conversations between district curriculum folks and teachers to make sure, one, we're assessing at these levels what in fact we're teaching. That is significant, and I think as we move forward, with whatever benchmarking looks like or whoever is helping us calculate our data down the road, I think as we continue to have thoughtful conversations about this is what we're teaching, under the framework of this is what we're being held accountable for, it better match to what we're assessing or it's all for naught. That's where distrust occurs. I would agree. But yes, you nailed it.
Mr. Jackson.
That was a great presentation. Dr. McNeil has a lot of information.
Too much.
Well, it was a lot. I just want to reiterate what Board Member Brown said. The teachers in this district, principals, everybody, the administrators, to show these types of results in the environment we've been operating in the last 2 years just shows the dedication of these educators, even in a brutal environment with huge class sizes, and it's been a long time since significant, let's put it out there, pay increases, and it's been a rough environment to teach, and these teachers, despite all of that, they care about, obviously they are dedicated educators, dedicated professionals, and the results are there. I just have to point out that I'm kind of amazed by the middle school, especially 8th grade results. I mean, that's just staggering increases. So, boy, the middle school, 8th grade math teachers in particular, boy, they are doing incredible work. So anyway, please thank them for all their hard work. I mean, all the teachers. This is impressive. Results in a tough environment.
Yeah. Madam President, Board Member Jackson, I think the resiliency of this organization is apparent, and I think it's thrown all over all of us, from administrators to teachers to custodians to cafeteria workers. We are resilient, and I believe that every day that we're fighting for kids, and that's important. So I would agree with your comments about the middle school. They should be celebrating until the cows come home. I'm proud.
Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you for your presentation. And listening to you going through this took me back to my site council days when I was at Kiva, where we poured through this level of detail. And I know back in the day, Dr. Helminski used to always ask us to track last year's 3rd graders against this year's 4th graders. It's apples to apples. And that the data you went through here it's there, but that's not what you did on each slide.
Right.
Do all site council, how do the site councils, when they're going through and determining what their objectives are, I forget what we call those, site-based objectives?
SIP?
Yes. How do they do the cohort like we did at Kiva several years ago?
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, that's a great question. And I remember when I was a principal back in the day, that's what probably has more significance than comparing 3rd grade to 3rd grade, different parts of kids. I will say that school principals at these levels have different strategies, and I can assure you that if you talk to a school principal, they will have that information readily available and that it's been shared. longitudinally. I mean, that was the intent of the school report card, if you will. It was to track kids from year to year to make sure that they're in fact growing. So again, that
Okay.
depends on the sites.
site.
But I would say that if you called a principal tonight and say, hey, do you look at how the third graders last year did in mathematics in fourth grade, and do you have it ready available, and has it been shared with your site council, your PTA, and your teachers? You bet.
Okay, fair enough. So then, let's assume our board is our own little site for the whole district. What's the right way for this board to be looking at it? The way we looked at it tonight, or should we look at cohorts? And I'm asking because we talked about making this a measurable objective,
Sure.
and that's why I'm asking which way we go.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, we need to look at it both ways. Because we are looking at two things. We're looking at student progress. We're also looking at teacher outcomes. And so I think it's important that we look at both of them, because grade level indicates some teacher things. Grade level to the next grade level indicates that growth in those components. So in reality, you need to dissect it both ways to really get a good, true picture.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, Dr. Peterson is exactly right. Both ways is the best way to do it. But like you said, there's two things that we could be looking at here. I mean, we can be real here. The test is different. So, I mean, even if you compared last year's third grade to this year's fourth grade, we still have a different type of test. We can just look at third grade to third grade, which the accountability does from the state. If you look at our letter grades, they don't track cohort kids. They track how you did last year in third grade reading, how did you do this year in third grade reading. I didn't make those rules. That's how they judge us. If last year 72% of our kids met or exceeded in third grade and we didn't go higher than 72, we got dinged points. If you increase that, then you got points. So the system or the calculation might not make sense, if you will, but again, that's the only show in town. But I think it's thoughtful leaders that say, hey, yeah, I get the game, but we need to be looking at realistically if the kids from one year to the next are growing at the same rate. And, then you bring in questions of mobility. Are they the same kids?
Sure.
If you have a high mobility at a school and you're at 40% passing and then this year at 50%, but you have half new kids, how much reliability can you really put on the data anyway?
So then for purposes of our measurable objectives that we talked about at our last study session, I was kind of hoping we could figure out what those goals would be at this meeting, but it sounds like it's going to take another meeting because we should do, you bring up some good points about third grade to third grade for the teacher impact and then second grade to third grade for the student growth.
Instruction.
So I like that idea, and I guess I just kick it back to you guys to say, with those parameters and guardrails, come back to us with reasonable goals.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, I can give you the information in a chart or a presentation of following cohort kids, if you will, and then whatever you all decide to do from there, that's easy. I can give you the information.
Well, I'd like to, yes, thank you, but also make a recommendation of what's achievable, right? A good center-cut goal for the entire organization. If you're at 99%, that's going to be tough.
I think what's important is you saw in a lot of these slides two things. You saw that we are achieving at a continuous high level. That's important to maintain. You also saw, I hope you noticed, that in math, we had some very significant gains. We focused very heavily on math this past year, and so it paid off. So again, we have to do two things. We have to look at the areas that we need focus and say, we're going to focus on that area, and at the same time, we have to say, we have to maintain that high level of performance. So there's multiple things that, as you talked about, we are going to do, and it's going to take work to do that, but we have to do that in order to get the success we have.
Okay, so that was my data question. I have a process question. Okay. The collaboration slides where you talked about the teachers coming in on September 3rd, I think it was. So school's already started. Did they come in on a school day, the teachers, to do the collaboration?
Yes, they did. Subs
and you
were
and you put subs in the classroom.
Subs were provided.
Okay. So, and are they writing questions, or are they just taking a pool of questions and weighting them?
I'm going to yield to the
Okay, Dr. Benson.
Dr. Benson.
Great job. You don't need to be yielding at all. Good evening. And would you restate your question again? Did we write
When they
questions?
come in, are they writing brand new questions, or are they looking at a pool of questions and tweaking, or are they just assigning weights? And my the bigger question I have is, we have Scottsdale teachers doing a lot of work.
You bet.
We're investing in putting substitutes in their classrooms where they could be teaching, but yet we have a sub. And at the end of the day, who owns this test that the teachers come up with? And then if it's not Scottsdale, who is it? And then can it be shopped further to other districts?
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, very loaded question, lots of layers to that. I'm going to talk to ELA and math first because that's kind of a different process than for the tests that we've been writing for our 50-plus tests with our 10,000 questions. So this year, we do one sub-day and we nail out a whole lot of work here. So we start actually in the spring, as you heard Dr. McNeil say, when we're looking at our curriculum maps, and we work with our teachers. We bring them in. That work extends through the summer PD Institute, where we're not paying teachers, but they are rolling up their sleeves and continuing that work for the curriculum maps. So when the maps are done, and you've seen those, evidence of 10-page plus documents, pacing guides, standards we need to teach, then we brought our teachers in one day, one teacher per, if we're looking at the middle school, like one teacher per school, representation from K2 and 3-5 bands across every learning community. So it's not one teacher from every school that does this work, but it'd be a K2 teacher and a 3-5 from every learning community. And in one day, they start and they look at our maps, and then they take a look at the benchmark questions that we have to choose from based on the blueprint, and they go through those. If we find areas where we don't believe they have enough questions, or we're concerned about the quality of questions, this year we were allowed to write up to about 5 questions. So that's a change and process improvement, because our teachers have asked for that as well, saying if we've gone through the bank and we don't believe the depth of knowledge for these questions is where we need to be, we'd like to start writing and contributing to our own.
I interrupt you. Where's the bank come from? Is that us, or that's the provider?
ELA and math, that's from our vendor.
Okay,
and
thank
so
you.
70-plus districts are using the same bank of questions. So when we write our own questions, we keep those. So we have evidence of the questions that we have added, but we do submit those to the bank. So ATI, our vendor, could share those with other teachers if they wanted to. Same process we used, and if you remember last spring, we've never been able to vet for our ELA and math post-tests. Remember, we used the same test that everybody, all the 70-plus districts were using, and our teachers said, no, wait a minute. We've got our own teachers writing our own pre-post tests in all the other areas for the purposes of classification. We'd like to have some say or control in vetting our questions for the ELA and math post-test, and so we did that. We let them vet again, and same thing. We could write up to 5 questions per test and add that. And again, if we see one of those misbehaving, we've requested to our vendor that they take it out. If our kids are not performing as expected and we can't figure out what's wrong with the question, we kick it out. So both of those are big process improvements based on what we've heard from our teachers, based on what we've heard from our board, and based on what we believe to be instructionally solid assessment practices. Smarter moving forward.
Okay, so we have added up to 10 questions max to the bank.
5 to the benchmarks and 5 to the post-test per test. So
the post-test doesn't go to the benchmark bank.
It's some of the questions, we're going to see more questions in them. Yeah.
Both. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And then ATI can take those new 10 questions and shop them to other districts.
They could, correct.
Okay.
I believe because we've kind of withdrawn from what the other 70 districts are doing, they're not. And because we are separate in the tests that we're writing too, we enter our own questions, and they're not giving our questions to other.
They're not. And so the weightings, when you went through that really complex AZ Merit, and it had all the different weightings, the men's, the max. So when our teachers do the weightings, and ATI, is that who's doing? Okay, ATI says, okay, this is the SUSD test. The XYZ district test may look completely different. Different weightings, different everything, right?
This year, because in this year, the tests that the other districts are using, the 70 districts, they are still more closely aligned with the former Ames test.
Okay.
And so knowing that we were going to break away from that this year, we went with Achieve the Org, and because Smarter Balance, Park, all the vendors were kind of staying in line with what Achieve the Org said. These are the things we know to be most important at every grade level. So we didn't go with a vendor. We went with a smart way to say we believe these are going to be what's going to be tested at every grade level. huge work on the part of our curriculum team and our teachers to begin to understand that this spring, and we believe it was a very valuable investment in time and energy.
And then after the students take the test, whether it be paper, pencil, or a computer, the vendor, as part of our contract that we pay them for, does all the grading, does all the summarizing.
Psychometrics, yes.
Well, not just the, but just the work.
They do all the legwork.
All the back end work. Okay, thank you.
I just want to point out too, prior to the completion of the test, we review the test to make sure that it's exactly what we asked for. So there is a process after they say, hey, Scottsdale, here's your 4th grade benchmark test. We then look at it again to say, did what we agreed that we were going to put on there actually get on there? So that's just another step of improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Bonnie.
The next item on the agenda is item 14C, Maintenance and Operations Update and Next Steps.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Our CFO, Danny O'Brien, and our Administrator for Certificated Human Resources, Dr. Sean Holmes, are going to present an overview of what we are looking at as we have been successful with our M&O override in our November election, and what are some of the next steps as we move into the spring to make sure that we not only do what we say we're going to do, but we also are able to accommodate the programs as we look to the future.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Peterson, Sandra. Again, this evening, we are just going to go through a brief overview of the M&O override. Now that we have been successful in our override, we just want to go and, again, bring to the board a review of what we talked about, what we promised, what we're going to do, and then a little bit about the budget timeline that we're going to have for this spring. Again, we've seen this slide many times throughout the process, but again, these are the major categories that we have discussed and promised to fund with these with the 15% M&O override dollars. Again, restoring specials, restoring elementary band and strings, reducing class size staffing ratios by 3, teacher horizontal move from prior years, salary staff increases across the district at 2%, health insurance, restore department chair supplementals, restore assistant principals, and restore Desert Canyon principal.
Okay, specific to the staffing implications, you'll recall that last year, or this year rather, we had reduced our specials by half at our elementary schools, so that will be fully restored next year to the model that we had employed last year. You'll also recall that we moved 4th and 5th grade band students this year to the middle schools, and as we committed to, we will be moving the instruction of band and strings at 4th and 5th grade back to the elementary schools. Our staffing ratios by 3. We talked about reducing class size by 3. You'll recall this past summer, or June specifically, that specifically was with respect to our staffing ratios that we use to allocate staff out to the schools. And we had presented this chart where on the line titled FY15, those were the staffing ratios that we used for this current year. And next year, each of those numbers will reduce by 3. So our staffing ratios for the following school year will be the bottom line. Just as a reminder related to staffing, we are moving up our timeline for staffing. The timeline that we have been using has not changed a lot in quite a number of years, but this year we are moving things up so that the staffing process finishes earlier, so that teachers know earlier about their assignments for the following year, and then principals will also know earlier about what potential hiring that they may have to do. And then horizontal movement. We've not been able to fund horizontal movement since 2011 with the passage of the override. As a reminder, everybody who had applied for, and we out of Human Resources had verified, had qualified for Human Resources as of last year, all of those individuals will receive horizontal movement going forward.
Again, staff increases. All employee groups will have not received a significant salary increase over the past several years, so we will work to take the 2% across the board and give raises to all salary groups. We've talked a lot about the health insurance in previous fiscal years. We have taken on a little bit of risk and not increased our premiums to the levels that the actuaries and the third-party administrators would like. We have kept those down below, so we didn't pass as much of the cost onto the employees that the outside people wanted to. So now we need to get back into that and fund it a little bit to help ensure that we continue to stay positive in the self-funded fund that we have. Department chairs, if we remember, we reduced in fiscal year 14, we reduced department chairs. And then we had some extra additional carryover dollars that we used to bring some of those back. We did use some additional monies this year to keep some of those we brought back. So we will fund the department chairs at the levels that we have this year. Restoring assistant principals. As we did in fiscal year 14, we reduced, we took 10 elementary assistant principals and made them half, so that they split their time between two schools. And then we did that, then we reduced 2 assistant principals at high schools. So because of the importance of assistant principals, how they do for the accountability, the safety, how they support the instructional leaders, the teachers on the campus, we will bring those, we will bring back 5 assistant principals to have every elementary have a full-time assistant principal, and bring back the 2 assistant principals at the high school to help continue to support the high school. Restore Desert Canyon principal. Again, in fiscal year 14, we had both the principals at Desert Canyon Elementary and Middle School leave those positions. We then placed 1 principal in there, Mr. Dale Link, who has been overseeing both of them. And through discussions with the community, this was important that they do want to go back to having a principal on each site, and we will do that. A little bit of the budget timeline. We are coming into the kind of what you would want to call the budget season, the spring season. So obviously between January and April, we will work with administration and the governing board, working through and continuously updating and briefing you on the budget items, not just the override, but all budget items. Obviously, we have new legislators this year. We have a new governor. So how that will outcome over the legislative period will be forthcoming, and we'll bring those to you. We are also continuing to work in the budget committee. We had a meeting on November 13th. We have one on December 11th on Thursday. And then we have one a month in January, February, and March. And again, not just looking at just the override money, but looking at the whole budget and continuing to look at efficiencies and looking at departments and where things can be budgeted for. So a little bit of now what? Now what are we going to do? Again, as I mentioned in the slide previously, continue to work with the Budget Committee, Administration, and the Board to create the fiscal year 16 budget. Obviously, again, as I mentioned, legislation and the governor-elect, the inflation funding lawsuit, the inflation that we're going to get on the base level amount that's standard now, all that will start to come together starting in late January as the legislature comes on board and the governor-elect comes into office and starts discussing the budget. HR, Human Resources, is currently increasing recruiting levels. As Dr. Holmes has mentioned, we will be bringing back some of those specials and reducing the class size, so we will be getting out there and making sure that we're recruiting teachers. I think with the pushing forward or pushing up the timeline, that obviously we want to get the best teachers in earliest that we can and get them commitments. See, I always need your help. HR will work with the executive directors, Dr. McNeil and Dr. Von Echten, and the principals to fill those 7 assistant principal positions, and that will begin in February. HR will work with Dale Link and the Desert Canyon community on the principal opening. That will start in December, and we'll work through the process to get that position hired. And then obviously, as I've mentioned, continue to closely watch the legislative session. I think we are all looking at the legislative session and believing that hopefully a lot of good progress will be made, but nonetheless, progress will be happening down there, so we want to make sure that we keep on that. Questions and comments?
Ms. Perleberg.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation and the good news of the override passing. So 2 questions. Going back to band and strings. I know when you stated that we would be taking it back to fiscal year 14, which was last school year. I think that's just that information alone, I think, would raise a lot of concerns for those involved in those programs and what they were like last year in reality in the classroom. So I wondered if there was more to expand on that. I
Sure.
hope.
Sure, Madam Board Member Perleberg. I've heard those concerns as well. And I have been speaking with a number of individuals. I actually will be, it's an agenda item that I'll be speaking with the principals about on Thursday about what exactly that model is going to look like. Okay. So we're still in the process of making a determination of exactly what it looks like. We know that the 4th and 5th are going to go back to elementary schools.
Right. And just what that will look like for next year. I know, obviously, a lot of questions came up last year about really maintaining the integrity of those programs and the value with the very limited time they had and the teachers stretched, over 6 campuses and all of that. So to hear, go back to last year, it's a little scary. So I look forward to those updates and more information then on the band and strings program. Okay. Also, kind of similar, the department chairs. So it was a question of going back to year 14. I was wondering what the cuts were, or if there were any cuts for department chairs from 13 to 14 that we are not going back to. I just out of curiosity.
I'm going to defer this to Dr. Sinton.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Board Member Perleberg, we are still looking at all the pricing out of it because the class size will affect how many department chairs we have, because the way they're paid is based on the number of teachers in their department. So we did have, like PE, we did not have a department chair. We went to 1 lead for the district. Also CTE and e-learning. So there are a few that we went to leads and counselors. Thank you. So we're still pricing out what that cost would be, and if we're able to work it in, then we could go back another year. But those are the ones that we're still looking at.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to band and strings for a second. Refresh my memory. Didn't we from fiscal year 13 to 14, we cut band and strings, right? And so the same question that Board Member Perleberg had for department chairs, and the answer that Dr. Sitton gave us, I would like to ask the same kind of question for band and strings. Could we cost out what it would take to go back to full year 13, and if there's dollars to take it back, dollars available, reinstate that?
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, yes, and we've done that. That's Dr. Holmes is going to be meeting with principals on Thursday. Really the goal, and we've talked with Mrs. Perleberg about this, is to go back to that 4-school model from the 6-school model, and that's what we're working to see how all that comes together as we move forward.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now I've got questions on the staffing ratios. On the page that says current and projected classroom staffing ratios, and it has the grid by grade, what's in full year 15, are those, how do I say this question so that it's clear? The full year 15 is what we budgeted for. So we, based on the enrollment we had back in June, we budgeted teachers to meet these ratios. Are these the ratios we budgeted to meet back in June?
Those are the ratios we used last year, correct? Okay.
So now my question is, what are our actuals? Because of the enrollment decline that we had, what are our actuals really? Because I'm assuming that they mostly came from K-5, the decline, but I don't know yet. Are our actuals all lower than these targets?
We can look at that and get back to you. I can tell you historically that actuals, averages tend to be lower than the actual ratio itself on every year.
Because if that's okay.
Because remember, our staffing ratios, these tend to be, I'm going to say tend to be our ceilings. Occasionally we'll go 1 or 2 over, but historically when I've looked back at, what are the actuals versus the actual staffing ratios, they tend to be lower than what the...
Because we had in this area $3.5 million set aside to meet the targets, right? And if we're already lower, if we think in some areas we may be lower already because of the enrollment decline, then we won't have to spend all of that $3.5 million, which then frees it up to reinvest in things like the department chairs and the band and strings.
Board Member Kirby, we estimated and projected that the $3.5 million would be the cost to reduce the class sizes by 3 based off of this information, the information we had last spring. We will continuously look through the budget process on exactly what you're stating there is where all the categories are and where all the money is. We need to remember that the 15% allocation, so let's go to the $18.8 million that we've estimated is going to bring in, is going to change based off of the legislature and based off of ADM and budget process. So if we go up in ADM, that amount could be higher. If we go lower, it could be, the $18.8 million could be lower. If we get a 1% inflation level adjustment on the base level versus a 2%, that makes a difference in how much money will come from.
Wait, I got to interrupt you for a second, because if our enrollment declines, we lose, our ADM declines, not enrollment. If our ADM, which is close to enrollment, declines, we lose funding from the state, the per pupil funding. But that is a completely separate bucket than the M&O override that the voters approved, the $18 million.
Board Member Kirby, let me try to re-explain myself maybe then. So when we do our base level amount, so when we do the amount of students that we have, 25,000, multiply it out by the base level amount, add in our transportation dollars, add in our weights and all that, we get what's called the RCL, or the revenue control limit. The M&O dollars are 15% of the revenue control limit. So if the revenue control limit changes from our projections, either positive or negative, then it changes the dollar amount that we get from the 15% override.
So are you suggesting that the $18 million that the override, everyone's got that ingrained in their heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
$7 million of maintenance and $11 million of new dollars. Are you suggesting that $18 million figure could go down?
Yes, Board Member
because
Kirby,
of
it could go down because of several
because
several
of the
things.
15% cap of M&O under the revenue control limit.
Yes. It's 15% of the revenue control limit. So if
Is the ceiling, or is it the act?
It's the actual. So the M&O override produces dollars equal to 15% of the RCL. So if the revenue control limit changes, the amount that we receive for the M&O override changes. So if the governor-elect or the legislature settles on the historical inflation amount and increases the base support level to what it should have been if inflation was funded every year, then that RCL is automatically going to go up.
Okay.
And potentially the $18.8 million will go up.
But if our enrollment has declined, our ADM has declined, which we know it has, does that affect the revenue control limit?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be almost a push, is what you're, because we...
Potentially it could be a push or it could equal out, yes. We don't know. We'll have to wait until the legislature works through that process. But the ups and the downs could level it out, or it could go...
Is the 1.5%, what are we calling it? The 1.5% inflation funding increase to the base level, is that still debatable? Or is that a done
Madam
deal?
President, Board Member Kirby, that's not debatable. The issue is when it actually gets appropriated and funded. So when the legislature comes back into session the second week of January, that's the first thing they're going to be working on. So the issue for us is get that base level brought up, we get those dollars, and then that starts the new base moving forward for inflation.
So, because I thought it was just, I thought it going forward, the legislature had committed to funding it going forward. It was just the retroactive.
No, there's actually three things. Moving forward, we get inflation no matter what, because that was what the court said. Then the court said, oh, by the way, in this year, you have to take the current base level and you need to raise it several $100s to what it should have been if you would have done that. That's the $300 million that the state is talking about this year. Then the other money you hear is that $1.3 billion. That's making up the last 5 years of dollars of money that we never received. So moving forward, we are guaranteed it. The $314 million is what it costs this year to get everybody to this year's level, and then the $1.3 billion is what it takes to make up the 5 years of payments that we did not get. So there's really three factors in all of that. The court has ruled on two of them. The court has ruled on the inflation moving forward and has ruled and said you have to adjust this year. Court's done that. The final ruling is what was argued a while back, and then we haven't received the court ruling on it, and that is, do we get the 5 years of payments? And if we do get it, is it going to be spread out over the next 3, 5, 6 years?
Okay, so thank you for that. And so I want to go back to the staffing ratios. This is going to be under a microscope from our community, because this was huge in garnering support for the override as the class sizes were going to come down. And so we need more detail than this slide to demonstrate to our community that we have actually reduced the class sizes versus these targets, because I know for a fact there's some fifth grade classrooms right now that, because of where they were geographically located and the enrollment declines they saw, they're sitting right now at 25. And so those families should not expect to be at 22 next year, right? But should they expect, is it possible that they could go up to 27?
Possible.
That's the kind of detail so that we manage expectations. And I'm not really even sure, because we need to work through that very, very carefully. And then when you get to the high school level, now you're talking subjects and programs. Is it just all ninth graders, regardless if you're in a science class versus an English language arts class? If you're in an English language arts class with 45 students, might you only go to 42? But if you're
no, absolutely not. Okay. It's staffing at that level of 36. The problem is those overages, again, there's multiple reasons for them that we are not going to make sure we repeat next year.
That's okay, but that's a bad example. I didn't mean to pick on that, but pick another.
We're not going to repeat that one.
Okay, but pick another subject. We need to provide more detail, a lot more detail, on this slide.
Sure.
And then finally, the loss of ADM is going to be a big hit to our budget for this upcoming year. I'm not going to throw any numbers out, but I think our budget committee needs to have, or sooner than later, like their next meeting, some projections from administration on what that dollar figure is, because M&O's protected, or whatever the dollars are for the M&O is going to go exactly where we said it was going to go. We have possible inflation funding, which I think either needs to go to reduce class sizes or increase teacher pay. We need to talk about that and vet that out. That then leaves the decline in our budget due to reduced ADM. And I don't believe anyone is expecting that those inflation dollars or that those M&O dollars are going to go offset that ADM dollar loss. I certainly don't expect it to. And if administration is suggesting that we might use some of those inflation dollars to offset the decline in our funding from ADM, or we may use some of those M&O dollars, then we need to talk about that tonight, because that sets the tone for the budget committee and for the next 3 or 4 months.
Board Member Kirby, absolutely agree with a lot of your statements. We're continuously looking at the budget on a regular basis, and the budget committee will get the figures as soon as we know them. But getting to January is important because we can start to determine what the legislature is going to look like and what they're going to do. Because the inflation dollars are an important piece, the historical inflation dollars, and then also, are we going to get the inflation dollars this year? Are we going to get them next year? Are they going to spread them out over a couple of years? And then getting to the 100th day, which I don't know the exact date, but it's mid to late January, to see exactly what that ADM loss might possibly be, because we are seeing students come back even now after the election. So I think that 100th day and that first couple days of the session and the governor-elect state of the state is really going to determine how we continue to do it in the January, February, March budget committees going forward, and what I present to the board starting in the spring.
Okay, I don't disagree with anything you said, but I didn't hear you say that you agreed with what I said, and that the inflation dollars, if they come, and I'll agree it's completely, after what Dr. Peterson just said, it's debatable of whether we're going to see it or not. But if we see it, there is an expectation in our community that those dollars will either go to increase teacher pay, because they've not received a pay increase for 4 years, or reduce class sizes, okay? There's that expectation. There's an expectation that the $18 million of M&O, and if there's a revenue control limit, I'll figure that out, is going to go exactly where we told the taxpayers it was going to go. Which then means if there's a budget decrease because of ADM loss, then we need to go find efficiencies to find those dollars and not use inflation dollars and not use M&O dollars to offset that decline. Do you agree with that?
Board Member Kirby, I agree with everything you said. Not going to disagree. The inflation dollars, the expectation, and then what we work through as administration and the governing board next spring on how to use those dollars could be very different from possibly what expectations are out in the community with other employees, all the way around. Because I think everybody has an expectation of and a thought of where those dollars should go. And through the spring, or even into the summer, depending on when we know we're going to get those dollars, then obviously that has to be vetted out with administration and with the governing board to determine where those dollars are going to go.
Okay, fair enough.
We absolutely have to spend the dollars in the categories that we promised the M&O dollars to be spent. On the M&O override.
So on the inflation dollars, then I'm trying to read between the lines and read between what you're saying. I agree. Those are two areas that majority of the community, but we could invest elsewhere. The bottom line is, are we going to invest in our classroom with the inflation dollars that we might get, or are we going to invest in maintaining the overhead even though our enrollment's continuing to decline? Therein is the bottom line, is where the inflation dollars, are they going to go offset the potential $2 million in budget decline because our ADM declined, and just so we can keep our buildings and keep our buses, or are we going to take that 1.5 million or 1.5% inflation increase and put it in the classroom, regardless if it's teachers or reduced class sizes, whatever? That's my question.
Madam President, Board Member Kirby, my answer to that is I think we're going to need to do some of all of that. I don't think I can just say, yep, you're going to put it all in this box, that box. I think there's going to be a part of the pie that's going to go to each one of them. I also believe that as we've committed in January, we are starting community discussions about our facilities, about looking at our facilities and what we're going to do in the future. That needs to play in this also, because that's another part of it. Are we going to reduce some facilities? How is that going to impact us? So all of those things together, I think it's a little bit early. We would like to be able to speculate and put it there. I think it's just a little bit early, but we understand the intent, and we hear from the board, here's some priorities. We will share that with the budget committee. At the same time, I think we're going to have to see how it all falls out. I think, as Danny said, we have to commit these M&O dollars the way we said we're going to do it. That's the public trust. That's what we were voted on. The next step then is to say, okay, what are the impacts with reduced ADM? What does that look like? Where do we have some gaps? Where do we have to fill in those gaps? And how do we fill in those gaps? I think we also have to commit, and I've said this publicly, we got to get raises to our employees beyond just this from here. How do we do that? I don't know, but we've got to do that. And then we've heard from our public saying we also want to look at some other programs and continue targeted in specific areas, lower class sizes. Okay, we got to figure out what that looks like, what it costs, and where those dollars will come. So there's multiple steps in all of this we have to do. And I don't think, I don't feel comfortable giving you a direct answer of this or that right now. What I feel comfortable saying to you is we are committed to doing all of that and trying to put that piece of the puzzles together so we have a final picture for you.
Thank you. And you haven't heard from all of the board. You've heard from me, and so I'd like to hear from my colleagues. But it is vitally important to me as one board member among 5 that any of the inflation dollars that we may receive are directed to the classroom, be it salaries, programs, whatever, reduced class sizes, as opposed to maintaining infrastructure and keeping schools open that are at 50% utilization, or driving buses that are at 10% utilization. And I'd love to hear from my colleagues on their thoughts on that.
So you're not suggesting adding, talking about facilities under the maintenance and operation agenda item, though?
No, I'm talking about to get your perspective on maintaining overhead with inflation dollars or prioritizing the classroom with those inflation dollars.
Mr. Jackson?
Because overhead is M&O. Part of it would be M&O. It's everything that comes, we've talked about. It's the landscaping, the water, the utilities, et cetera, that come with the facilities.
Thank you for the presentation. I've actually wanted to, I understand your question. I wanted to talk about the M&O presentation first. I just want to thank you both, all three, well, you two guys and David, for once again, I think we've been very transparent and very clear as we possibly could when we started down the road of when the board approved putting the override on the ballot as to how that money was going to be spent. And to hear Danny and Dr. Peterson reiterate one more time that we need to spend the money is how we told our community we would spend the money when we asked them to pass the override. And to hear it said, I don't think we can say that enough, I guess is what I wanted to say. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for reiterating that. It's I've heard it, I'm sure all the board members have, from several people, that we better spend the money the way we said we would. And to hear it once again from Dr. Peterson and Danny's a great thing, because it's just can't be said enough. We need to do what we said we were going to do, and I know that that's the intent. We just need to make sure that happens. With respect to Board Member Kirby, I too would like to see inflation dollars as much as possible put into the classroom. Of course, I mean I think that's I don't want to put as much as possible. Of course, any inflation dollars we get, we'd like to see in the classroom. That's always, I almost goes without saying, but I agree with that sentiment.
Mrs. Perleberg.
I, of course, would absolutely agree that the accounting of these dollars, new monies from the override and from any inflation funding that we receive, we need to be very thoughtful in its spending. We need to be very transparent in its spending, and we want to make sure that our communities see these dollars and this change, because they're the ones hanging with us, hanging through these difficult years and all these declines during this time. So I absolutely agree, and I think the point, to put a finer point on it, I think what I'm hearing and what I would agree with is that if a miracle happens and inflation funding comes in big and strong, or even little but nice. If it comes in, it can't be an excuse to avoid the difficult discussions that we have regarding our facilities and our space and our schools and what SUSD looks like. So I think that's the fine point we can make tonight as well, that we're ready to have those talks. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Well, I won't be around for those talks.
Darn.
You can come visit us and join us if you'd like to,
But
Member Brown.
I do think one of my parting shots should be, I want to frame this conversation about consolidations and facilities and just remind the current board and hopefully new board members out there, we were dedicated to not splitting up communities. We have committed to that. And with our existing schools, oh, I can't talk about this?
I just want to caution you that the item is noticed about M&O override and what happens next. So we don't want to get too far into what we might discuss about facilities.
I would hope we wouldn't use these M&O dollars on those aging facilities, but we can't do that anyway, right, Danny, kind of?
Yes, Board Member Brown.
Just to clarify that, and I don't know of a school that can hold 1,000 kids that's able to hold 1,000 kids, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm looking forward to these discussions in the future when they are on the agenda, and I'm just personally I'm cautious on making promises on money we don't have, because people tend to remember the promises, and then if circumstances change and the money doesn't come, they'll say, but you said. And so just like my own budget at home, I like to know where the money's actually coming before we have family talks on where it might be spent.
Don't count your chicken.
Exactly. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
The next item is item 15A, action item, approval of a revised strategic plan 2014-17 value statement.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. You have in your agenda, and it's also published in the agenda for our public, the first page of the strategic plan that has a correction or a revision in the value statement for collaboration. As you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about our goals and some metrics, and we're finalizing that work. But as part of that work, it was brought out and asked that we have the board approve a revised value statement for collaboration that says we work together and partner with the community that each school serves, united by a shared responsibility to educate our students. So this evening, the action item is asking you to approve that page with that change for collaboration.
Anyone like to make a motion or have a discussion?
Ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. I move to approve the revised strategic plan 2014-17 value statement under collaboration as written.
Can I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is item 15, action item B, adoption of certificate of the result of the special override and site sale election.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. O'Brien is going to, Danny O'Brien.
Congratulations, Danny.
There's
Be careful. Be careful what you ask for, Danny.
that horizontal movement.
Yes, vertical. He's going to ask you to approve the certificate that we have to do in accordance with the election requirements.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Peterson, Sandra. This is a little bit of a formality. The Governing Board needs to approve the election results so we can send them to the county recorder. Again, it's really a formality. The county elections department is the one who certifies the results.
Mrs. Kirby?
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
I move to adopt the certificate of the result of the special override and site sale election.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Brown seconds. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 5-0. The next item is item 15C, action item approve revisions to governing board policy JFB, open enrollment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. And as we've saved this last action item, a little bit purposefully, because we also want to wish Michelle Marshall happy birthday today.
Oh.
So happy birthday, Michelle.
Hey, have some cake.
What was that?
Have some cake.
I can't imagine a better way to spend my birthday. Thank you.
So she's spending her birthday with us to adopt the open enrollment policy.
Higher. Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Governing board members, gosh, you messed me up. Okay. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Peterson and Sandra, I'm bringing back to you for a second read and possible adoption of the revisions that we recommended to our open enrollment policy, JFB. Just again to remind our audience that we had you updated the open enrollment deadlines in your October meeting, and then we did a first read of these current proposed revisions in November. We were asked to put up red line comparison of both the current SUSD policy versus what we were proposing, as well as the current versus the ASBA, the Arizona School Boards Association model. We did put those on our website and also provide those to you as background. Just again to remind you what the highlights of what we're recommending be changed in the policy. Clarification that in-district open enrollment applications are given priority. Removal of references to campuses that no longer exist, Cholla and Oak. Clarifying for pre-K families that they may roll up to their kindergarten in the school that they're at pre-K and that they need to get their documents updated by the deadlines in the policy. And then finally, addition of ASBA model language regarding transportation. And with that, I'll take questions.
Mrs. Perleberg.
Thank you. Okay. First thing is the new language regarding the transportation.
Yes.
That I think you said it comes directly from ASBA. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Where I was specifically looking is it says well, you have transportation of student admitted through open enrollment. Then there's a resident transfer student language that basically says it's responsibility of the parent or guardian of the resident transfer student to have the student at a designated pickup point within the receiving school's transportation area. That.
I'm sorry.
Do you know where?
I'm just finding it.
That's okay.
Can you say that one more time?
So I'm looking right under transportation of students admitted through open enrollment. That section. That first paragraph addresses resident transfer students.
Yes.
So as I'm understanding that, that's in-district students who are going out of boundary. And the expectation, what I'm reading here is that within the boundaries of the school that they are open enrolling into, if they are brought to that bus stop, they have a right.
That's correct.
Right. So then the next paragraph addresses the non-resident open enrollment students, so out-of-district students, and it sounds similar, but then there's additional language that says, or as may be otherwise determined by the district. And I'm kind of wondering, like, why is it different, and what can of worms could that potentially open there?
That is a good question. The way it has operated in practice, and we don't have transportation here, but someone will correct me if I'm wrong, the way it has worked in practice, we haven't made other determinations than designated already district bus stops, and in fact, I believe we've reduced stops in looking at budget. But it's a good question because the language does sound like we could make other determinations. So we could certainly take that language out if the board wants us to do that.
Well, I'll certainly put that out for discussion. I guess it kind of leads to my other point is that Reading through the minutes for the enrollment process improvement that we received on Thursday.
Yes.
Raised some other questions for me, regarding this enrollment policy. Wondering if we could be jumping the gun a little bit, because reading through the minutes of the meeting, I was very impressed. I feel they're addressing some very serious concerns, some very critical concerns. I know they're not done. I know that there's questions or discussions, dialogue going on regarding things that I would see as possible enrollment policy questions, specifically the annual reapplication or review for open enrollment and the rights to revoke open enrollment privileges. I know for myself as a board member, I'd have some energy around that discussion. I would certainly love to see how that is played out in these meetings and these discussions first, knowing that language of other districts is quite different. And then I noticed that they do have, moving forward for the meetings, looking at other districts' open enrollment policy language. So I'm kind of wondering if we're jumping the gun a bit on approving this tonight, when a little down the road would be a lot more productive. So.
And I will say that we've actually had the ASBA advisory recommendations for these changes for quite some time. We've sort of stopped and started because of these other discussions that, and I've been part of many of these discussions, especially with that question of revocation of open enrollment. With respect to that topic in particular, I would have some legal advice for the board, not in a public meeting. However, the only topic that has jumped out to me from those discussions that would be appropriate for policy, the governing board policy, would be if we do change to the reapplication annually, because there is language in the current policy that says once you're in, you're in, and that would have to change. Other than that, and I've shared this with our principals more than a few times, most of what they're talking about is where do we have resources to place kids appropriately, how can we improve the process, how can we get documents in a timely manner so that we can serve our kids the best way possible. And most of those other discussions aren't things that I would think belong in policy, but are part of the practice, so that when things don't work, people can tweak those things and discussions can be had, again, with principals at their meetings, with CEO staff, what's working, what's not, how can we fix this, as opposed to putting it in the policy. But I agree, there are discussions that might impact the language of this policy.
Okay. So I would like to put that out as far as discussion. A question if continuing these discussions would be helpful.
I would like to address one thing that you mentioned about transportation. So a couple years ago, we were taking a look at the wait list at Arcadia and the possibility of putting a bus over here to bring them to Saguaro or Coronado if we had enough that wanted to do it. So that would be an example of where we would take those outside the district. It wouldn't be a Saguaro bus they were going to catch or a Coronado bus, but if we had enough students that we could bring in from outside the districts that were off a wait list over here, we could then possibly transport them to another school, and it would not be an existing bus stop. So that would be an example of where the district may want to do that in the future if we had enough people, students to put on the bus. That's one conversation we've had.
Well, I appreciate that clarification. Honestly, it's what almost worried me is to open that can of worms. From here to here, then what becomes from here to here and here to here and there to there, and I mean that's what raised a flag for me is that possibility. I mean, I welcome input there, but that
we were
seems like
looking
a
at
potential, especially if you're looking at singling out of-district students for that benefit or whatever you want to call it, and versus in-district.
The conversation was around increasing enrollment and taking those that would want to be at one of our boarding schools and increase the enrollment at other schools, taking a look at the revenue that would come in with it. So that would
balance. So the revenue that would bring versus the cost of the busing. I mean, all I say is or suggest is that those are some pretty big questions. I think we would need to look at and address and be very thoughtful in before we open that can of worms. I'm just suggesting that.
Is that, that's how our current policy is, though? That's not a change? That is a change?
That language is
Oh, the
new.
ASBA change, the
Yes.
ASBA language?
That
Yes, that's the
transportation
ASBA
language is new.
And you indicated that you might want to have, that you might have something to say to the board in an executive session about it?
With respect to the specific topic of revocation of open enrollment.
Oh, okay.
And what that means is Michelle would have to, obviously, in executive session, give you some legal advice, because there's a lot of statutory law and rulings out there that says when a student attends, whether it's through open enrollment or anywhere else, and you revoke that, and you were to revoke open enrollment after they've been with you, it's actually an expulsion, and you'd have to go through an expulsion process, not just saying we're revoking you from year to year. So we got to be careful about that because of some legal issues.
So the districts that do have revocation language that I've seen regarding, I mean, from attendance to student achievement, you're saying
they have to go
it's an
through the due
actual
process. Those
expulsion?
students have
Okay.
due process rights.
Yeah.
They have to go through the actual expulsion process with them.
Right. Well, I said I would welcome those discussions, and I think especially wrapped around these meetings, and I guess really, yeah, as far as this language in the transportation as well. I mean, I think that is kind of a question we'd have to ask. My first red flag was that it was different from in-district enrollment students and seemed to open a door, and then the question of is that a door we even want to open anywhere? So again, I would welcome further discussion on that. So.
And I don't know what ASBA's reasoning is behind that language, but I can certainly follow up with that.
Thank you. That would be great.
And I just want to remind you on the transportation, I've talked before, that we do have one route outside of our district, and that's because of the Rio Verde situation. When they became incorporated and went to Cave Creek, we've grandfathered those students in until they graduate, but that is the only route. And so for us, I don't think this is something that we would say, take it out. We're okay with that.
So I have a question. If we're going from one high school, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kirby, you were first. Okay, if you were going from one high school, if we have a bus, like say there's enough kids in Arcadia that want to go to the IB program, do we, and this is probably more of a transportation program or question, would we fund that? And or if there's, like I know from Saguaro to maybe the advertising art program in Arcadia, do we provide funding for, programmatic funding for our own high school kids?
We do for IB.
For IB, okay.
The other, Madam President, the other area that we transport is with CTE. So students that will go to a CTE program, like the nursing program at Saguaro, or if they're actually going to EVIT, we have that. But that's with our own students within the district.
Mrs. Kirby.
Thank you. And on that point, I think we need, I know I need as a board member quite a bit of catch up on what are we actually doing today. Similar to the questions that President Sneed had, what are the programs that we provide transportation for? How is that decision made? And what do the financials behind those decisions look like? To give me a baseline of what does this mean, this new language mean to us as a district. So I would agree with Board Member Perleberg. I need a lot more information on this, but I have a couple of questions as well that I'll just throw out there. And if you don't have the answer, that's okay. We can talk about it next time. When it says of not more than 20 miles, so the district may provide transportation for open enrollment, non-resident students who meet the eligibility requirements, et cetera, of not more than 20 miles to and from. Does that mean 20 miles out, 20 miles back, or 10 miles out, 10 miles back?
That's a really good question.
Okay.
I'm not
Ask
sure.
ASBA.
That is straight out of the statute. I do know that. I don't know the answer to that specific question,
Okay.
whether it's round trip or not.
That's the one. And then the
Okay.
second bullet,
Is it 20 miles out and 20 back?
okay, just the second bullet, third bullet, and I guess it's more than just get what's the answer. It's why. What should it be for us if we decide to do this?
Right.
Is should it be 5, 50? Make it meaningful. And then second bullet I get, third bullet I get, fourth bullet I have no idea what that's trying to say.
Are you looking at for the total miles
Yeah.
traveled each day?
Yeah.
To an adjacent district. I don't know the answer to that one
Okay.
either. I'll have to look.
So yeah, we can't. I don't know. I don't think we can approve language when we don't really know what we're saying. So if it's meaningful for Scottsdale, then let's say what we mean.
Okay.
Okay, and then off that area, I have some other areas of questions. Okay, under capacity.
Yes.
We just talked about adding language that ASBA suggested. ASBA also recommends that the governing board makes final determination on capacity. And I'd like to tee that up for discussion about adding that language in. And then under eligibility.
Before we leave capacity, Dr. Peterson, am I correct that the way it works right now is that it's determined administratively and then the board approves it on recommendation, or no? That's how it works right now?
Yeah, I mean, we establish those at the board approval.
Okay. But I know what language.
We've done it every year.
Right.
Okay. Our policy
I
actually,
do know.
yeah,
sorry.
our policy doesn't require board approval.
Right. And I know what difference in language
We
you're talking
did
about.
take it and have the board approve it, like back in, what was it, 08, 09?
Oh, okay, so it's been a while. And I guess, and I think why it might be important for us to just take a look at this every year is because the landscape is changing. It's very fluid right now.
Right.
And geographically and with the competitive landscape, and it just, I think if we're continually looking at it, we won't get caught like we did with, Hopi at 103% utilization. We would have seen that coming, most likely. Okay, so under eligibility.
Yes.
The students who apply for open enrollment status in the district must, in the second bullet, agree to provide their own transportation. Okay, I understand that. Then it says, limited transportation is available for students outside the district boundaries. So it seems like it's both. It could be either or.
And my understanding of that language goes back to the discussion about if you can get your out-of-district student to an existing bus stop that's in the district.
Or a student on an IEP.
Then can we say that? Can
Sure.
we say just that is to bring clarity to that? Because that, again, made no sense.
And this also would be read in conjunction with our policy EEAA called Walkers and Riders, and that language is in there as well as far as getting your out-of-district student to an existing bus stop.
Okay.
And it's cross-referenced, I believe. Walkers and Riders.
Okay. And then the next question I have is on priorities. And I think some of these maybe the committee can talk about and come back with a vetted recommendation. And I've talked to Dr. Peterson. I've called him twice, I think, almost with the Denny Brown. I've got an idea. I've called him with 2 new ideas in the past 48 hours on priorities. The first question was, it was a question. I'm going to ask it again for the record. Let's say that I'm in the Saguaro boundary and I'm at Mojave, but I'm trying to open enroll into Arcadia.
Okay.
And there's another family in Coronado that's at Supai trying to open enroll into Arcadia. Do we have a process by which one of those families is waitlisted or gets priority, or is it a lottery? How does that work?
I believe it's a lottery, but I'm going to ask Dr. Sitton to elaborate.
Board Member Kirby, it is a lottery that they use, assuming they all got it in during the priority time and weren't late. They lottery the students if there's not enough capacity to put them there.
Okay. So I would like to get the committee feedback on would having a wait-listed approach to it versus a lottery approach bring more transparency to the process? And is more transparency worth the process changes that would have to occur? And by that could we come up with something that would trigger, yes, you have done X within our application process that has secured you a wait-listed spot, and you are number 15. And you don't have to answer it. It's a rhetorical question tonight, but kick it to the committee, and I'd like to get their feedback on, is the juice worth the squeeze on that one? Okay. And then the second question, the second big idea that I had for Dr. Peterson is similar in nature. I'm going to use another example. Let's say we have I'm the Mojave 8th grader trying to get into Arcadia, but there is an 8th grader who lives in Arcadia at Veritas who's trying to get into Arcadia. Who gets priority?
So if they live in Arcadia, that is their home school, they have the priority because they're not considered open enrollment.
So a non-SUSD student would get priority over an existing SUSD student in that example.
I'm going to say it another way. A student living in the Arcadia boundaries would get priority over an SUS student not living in the boundary.
But that student is at Veritas.
Correct.
Okay. So, again, for the committee to think about, is it worth taking care of our own, those that have stayed with us in our schools, and giving them priority to their schools that they desire over the charters and privates? Is that a competitive advantage to us or not? And again, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are there unintended downsides that I haven't thought of? And there could be. We don't have to answer it tonight. I just want the committee to think about that.
I'm happy to help bring that back to the committee. I did want to say that there is state statute that requires that we admit students within our boundaries who are between the ages of 6 and 21 as long as they meet the enrollment requirements, I think is the language.
Okay.
And so I was asking the question, well, what are the enrollment requirements and who's in control of that? I also think that it might, and I don't know what the consequences would be, but I think it might cause people to complain that we are going against the public policy that's clearly been stated by the legislature of school choice. And so I'm just wondering whether we would get pushback on that as well.
Okay, fair enough.
Those are things I thought
so
about.
let me give you then a little slightly different.
Sure.
Instead of it being an Arcadia student who's going to Veritas,
right,
it's a Saguaro boundary student who's at Cicero. So if
wanting to go to Arcadia.
So now they're both out of Arcadia boundary. Is there an opportunity? I don't want to break the law.
Right. I know. I know
so
you don't.
that's just a question that I'd like to just tee up.
And it's a good question for the committee because those are people who would know, is that going to be a pain? Is it worth it, like you said? So
right. Yeah. Okay. And then moving on, I have a question on pre-K.
Pre-K.
Before I ask my question, I want to make it very clear to anyone who might be watching. I can speak for myself. Even though I'm asking these questions, I have no intention of changing the open enrollment policy for our current pre-K students who are going into kindergarten next year. I think we've committed to them that they will go into the schools that they're currently at if they met their open enrollment process, the application process. So I'm going to ask these questions, but it is not to change anything for those students today. Our pre-K is not cheap.
Right.
It's about $6,000 a year. Okay. Are we indirectly giving preferential treatment to those of higher socioeconomic status to get into Cheyenne, for example, which has a wait list, by allowing them, if they can pay the $6,000 to get into pre-K, they then can secure a spot in Cheyenne? And
We have had those discussions, and we've had constituents on both sides of that issue. You know, how can you turn me away? I'm at this pre-K, and that's where my kids used to be, and how can you expel my child? You heard those parents from Cheyenne a couple meetings ago. And exactly that point on the other side, are we disadvantaging people who can't afford that program to secure the spot? So it's not an easy question, but it's a valid question.
And the language that's being proposed right now, it says so long as they complete the open enrollment application by the application deadlines and the enrollment deadlines. I guess if they would get preferential treatment if they.
Right, and that language didn't. That language was to clarify for those pre-K families that didn't understand they still had to do an extra step.
Okay.
Of
that doesn't address
as if they were coming to kindergarten. Yeah,
okay.
it's not really to do with
I don't
what
know.
you're talking about.
This is.
It's a good question.
It's 6,000. I looked it up today. It's about
we
6.
Absolutely struggled with that question. And sorry.
Well, you're good. Keep talking. You're doing good.
I get off that easy.
Go ahead.
I don't know how honest I should be. We actually were talking about recommending the opposite and saying it's not fair. And so we struggle with it for sure.
So you talk. Okay. So
before the discussion where we had some parents who were concerned, we actually were considering recommending that it didn't roll up because we were worried about the fairness question. And so what I'm saying is, we get it, and it's not an easy answer.
Did you recommend one or the other? I can't tell from this language.
We recommended that they roll up.
Okay.
After we had some feedback from our current pre-K Cheyenne parents.
But they should be grandfathered into whatever we do, whatever we're doing today.
Sure. No, we've already told
they're
them.
grandfathered in.
Yes.
But what about? It's because I've talked to some constituents up in the Cheyenne area that they're not Title I, but they can't afford the $6,000. But they'd really like to go to Cheyenne, and they feel like they're being disadvantaged as well. So going forward, not our current pre-K,
right,
but for the pre-Kers 2 years from now, possibly, what's the right thing to do? I just want to write a policy that's the right thing to do for the future versus the right thing to do right now.
Now, for Cheyenne, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 3, is it 3 kindergartens or 2?
We have 3.
3. And we have how many kindergartens?
You have 3 kindergartens? 4. 4.
And 1 preschool. And 1 preschool. So the current numbers, from what I understand, would only fill 1 kinder class, and there would be 3 additional classes available for people whose kids were not in the pre-K program. That's the current picture.
And those students would also follow the same guidelines that we use for all the enrollment there. If they have current siblings enrolled there, a current district, the rest of that falls into play for them too. So, we did discuss this when we talked about opening Cheyenne this year. I know we've had a conversation when we first started it last fall. It's a philosophical question. I mean, the other side of this is Panda, Title I, the first things first classes at HOCOM, and the ones we're trying to expand, which are scholarship and free to families. Same conversation. Do they not automatically roll? The basic issue becomes is you're talking at a campus that has capacity. And we don't have one in Hopi because there's no room. We don't have one at some of the schools that are full because there isn't enough room. There happen to be the right rooms at the right times in Cheyenne to use one. And in a economic time in this district when we were trying to make revenue sources, that was the right thing to do. Why leave the room empty for a year or two? Let's put it in there. Let's get good sound programs going, and we can look at it each year and see if it becomes a problem. Maybe it's something we revisit. This language that we're talking about, though, this is the same language we've had. Some of this is just clarifying it. When we had the ECC Choya and Oak language, this is the exact same language that we followed with them, to whatever schools they went to. We're just clarifying the open enrollment piece of the process piece of it. But yeah, I mean, it's not either way you go. There's people on both sides of the fence that we're going to hear from, but you guys are going to hear from too.
Okay, so maybe what you said though is the game changer on determining which way you go is how utilized is the school. Sure. It's only when it becomes highly utilized does it become really a question. If there's room, there's plenty of room, it's a non-issue, right? So maybe that's the language we need to focus in on, is once the school reaches a certain utilization threshold, then something else triggers or something else kicks in. And I'm not trying to write policy from up here. It's just I'm trying to think through how we might be fair.
Completely agree. I think it's something we need to analyze and look at. I mean, Pueblo, same type of choice school. There's 5 rooms there. We got almost 100 kids there going there, but there's not also an issue getting into kindergarten there. We want to grow Pueblo, so there's no concerns. So yeah, that's going to be something that, if maybe it's a percentage, maybe we look at something where it's an 80% or some type of areas that campus is getting close to capacity. We maybe pull back on those fee-based programs if we think that's the best interest of the school.
Well, it looks to me as though we're going to be tabling this discussion to get more input from the committee. Okay. And so I would say write down your questions and maybe send them to Michelle or Dr. Peterson so that the committee gets them.
And Madam President, just to be clear for the record, for all the folks that I have to talk to, or my department does, this spring nothing is changing. If they're at Cheyenne or any other school, they're going to roll like we've said they would, and if we're going to change it, it'll be next spring.
Okay, so we will table this discussion until we get more input from the committee. The next item on the agenda is item 16, future items. Board members may propose topics for future consideration. Mr. Jackson.
This is probably out of order, but I'm going to do it anyway. I just wanted to take a moment before we left tonight. I'll be very brief to thank Denny Brown again. I meant to do it earlier. There was never really an opportunity. My 2 years on the board, Denny Brown has been, especially through a very difficult time in the school district, Denny Brown has been an optimistic voice of reason when we were all kind of going through a lot of very tough things. And he's always, never has an unkind word. He is an uncomplicated man. He's a very bright guy, but he's not a complex man. Denny cares about kids. Denny cares about public schools. He has no agendas ever other than trying to do what's right for kids. He is a gentleman. He's a kind, thoughtful man, and we have been very blessed to have his service. And anyway, thank you, Denny.
You are by far my favorite cheerleader of all.
It just dawned on me that my favorite part of Board Member Brown, the public has never gotten to hear.
That's true.
His admonition in executive session.
Oh.
Can we just do it for the record?
Oh, I'm trying to see if I have.
Oh my.
Thank you.
Encore performance.
Thank you.
I just wanted folks to see the clock. It's quite a clock. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's very nice. No, I don't have it. You don't know it by heart?
Oh, no.
Come on.
Sorry.
Well, it is something to behold.
Last thing is, Denny, I know I'm going on and on. I'm getting emotional up here. Denny has, one last thing that I've always admired about Denny, I'll be very brief. Denny is always been the voice for a part of our district that doesn't speak for it, doesn't have a voice. Like, we have a diversified district, but especially our Coronado learning community. Denny has a passion in his heart to help kids that are in our schools that need a little extra care, and he is always their champion. He's champion for the whole district. He is a wonderful advocate for our school district. I don't know of a better one, but I've always admired Denny's passion for helping schools in the southern part of our district that always need a little special voice, in my opinion. So thank you again, Denny. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mrs. Kirby.
If you're ready for agenda items, I have some. Okay. So inflation dollars and what our investment. Is it too small to reach? Have the floor. It is. It is
Just
one.
hit
It is
Control
something
plus.
to behold.
Oh, don't get too close to the mic.
All persons present at an executive session are hereby reminded that ARS 38-431.03 imposes strict confidentiality requirements on discussions that occur in executive session. Generally, such discussions cannot be revealed to non-board members unless necessary to carry out the purpose of the statutory provision that specifically permits an executive session. The open meeting law provides for a fine up to $500 for violating this confidentiality requirement and requires this ammunition be given. That's it.
He did not embellish. He read it like that every single time.
Every meeting.
Okay, on to business. Inflation dollars and what our investment priorities are. And then consolidation discussions with the community, I believe, begins in January. Before those discussions begin, can we have administration present what the process will look like? Just the process of how this is going to work. Thank you.
Public agenda. Okay. Let's see here. I have this one. I'll just take it off of here. January 8th study session. That will be the board retreat and the swearing-in reorganization. January 13th will be regular meeting. February 5th, the study session, and February 10th, a regular meeting. Governing board reports.
Goodbye.
Take a name badge.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much, everybody, and happy birthday, Michelle. You're not going anywhere, Denny. We're not letting you go.